How are you feeling? How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer.
Eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital.
That's difficult to answer.
inside my head of crying people facing death. Is this the end? Is this the end? Oh, I'm burning in the storm, there's no place to hide. I'm burning in the storm, this is the final time. What have we done to the world? What have we done to the world? I'm burning in the storm, there's no place to hide. I'm burning in the storm, this is the final
And lastly, we ask that there be no recording or streaming of today's sessions from the floor. And any disruptive behavior in today's session will result in being removed from the call.
We please ask that there will be no recording or streaming of today's sessions from the floor. Any disruptive behavior today could result in being removed from the call. So, just be a nice person. So with the little housekeeping things out of the way, let's jump right in.
Again, we ask no recording or streaming of today's session.
We ask that there be no recording or streaming of today's session from the floor. Any disruptive behavior in today's session will result in being removed from the call.
Won't anybody help us? What are we running for? When there's nowhere we can run to anymore. Can't afford to be innocent. Stand up and face the enemy. It's a do or die situation. We will be invincible. And with the power of conviction, there is no sacrifice. It's a do or die situation. We will be invincible.
Who the fuck is Karlyn? She's just some sweet lady. She's like in a knitting. She does like a knitting stream. She's like a knitting YouTuber. She does knitting.
Can we grow up a little bit and
Alt
not
Girl
be
sent $200.
retarded?
Have you
Please.
seen the work of Karlyn Borysenko? Anti-commie cult leader and is obsessed with looking at what actual far-left communists are talking about and organizing today, infiltrating them. They infiltrated the universities, schools, media. She has the receipts to back it up. Primary source evidence. Infestation is dire and she calls Republicans idiots eating slop. Agree.
Thank you for the big super chat. Yeah, I know Karlyn B. She's solid. She's funny. I
The
like
great
her.
noticer sent $200.
Literally,
So
not
it's,
Ian.
it's not because I haven't dangled my junk into the combat zone on purpose to get some camera footage, but that's the big part of what's the
Is
problem.
that what you call reporting?
Go
and live
under if
streaming?
you're going to do it.
Yeah,
go
seriously.
undercover. Otherwise, you're wearing a hunk of meat in a lion's den. Nick Shirley, I love you. Take care of yourself, man. Karlyn Borysenko went undercover. Do stuff like that. Like if you want to expose this thing, don't pariah. Please.
But Ian, here's and I agree with you to an extent.
What up? What up? What up? What up? I know how to turn my microphone on. Hey guys, it's
Thursday. Do you know what that means? Do you know what it means? It means I have to get on an airplane tomorrow. I haven't even started packing to get on an airplane tomorrow. I don't even know where half my stuff is. I don't even know how in the ever loving F am I going to get on an airplane tomorrow to go on a super secret undercover mission. Yeah, I should just, this is actually, you know what? This is actually probably the best suggestion. I should just start drinking now. I really should. I should just start drinking now. I'm going to be drunk on the plane anyway. There's nothing better to do on a plane than drink. Like literally, you're stuck in the middle of the sky. What else are you going to do? Also, I will be spending some time in the airport club prior to getting on the plane, and in the airport club they give you free booze. And so who's to say that I shouldn't drink the free booze that they're going to give me anyway, that I pay for when I sign up for the airport club in the first place? But like, you know, it's free. They don't charge you once you're in there, so it feels like you're not paying for it, which means you need to drink more. And of course, when you're in an airplane, here's the general rule that I always used to follow when I was traveling a lot. When you're in an airport, calories don't count. Okay? You can eat whatever the fuck you want in an airport and it doesn't count. You can drink however much you want and it doesn't count. The airport is a magical place that it's kind of like the airport is like an alternate dimension where nothing that you do in the alternate dimension counts in the real world. It's like a place where you get to meet travelers and you're never going to see these people again, and you get to have interesting conversations with people in this alternate dimension where there's like no consequence to it. There is no consequence at the airport. You can say whatever the fuck you want. You can be your best racist self. And well, actually, no, don't do that. Don't do that. They might put you on the no-fly list if you're a racist. So don't do that. Don't do that. I'm not talking about screaming at a black person in the middle of the airport. I'm talking about having a conversation with someone at the bar and saying something a little off color. That's what I'm not talking about doing something racist. I'm saying if you're sitting in a bar and everyone's drinking anyway, who's to say what happens if you make an off-color remark at the bar? That's all I'm saying. Okay. Let's rein it in, shall we? Today, this show has already gone off the rails. I still have to pack a suitcase, man. Whatever. Yeah, whatever happens in the airport stays in the airport. That's exactly right. No, we're not going to watch Nick. Listen. No disrespect to Nick Fuentes. I am so fucking sick of watching Nick Fuentes do the same interview over and over and over. I know Nick Fuentes' story, okay? And props to Crowder for having him on and calling everyone out, and that's all fine, well and good. I just don't feel like watching the same interview with Nick again for the 8,000th time. And you know, have I been drinking? No, I haven't actually. The only thing I've had is my coffee. That's it. I actually have not. I am actually completely sober right now. Sad but true. Anyway, by popular demand, we are continuing the project that we have been working on the last couple days, and we are watching some presentations that I secretly recorded back in September from the Revolutionary Socialism Conference. And when I say it's a Revolutionary Socialism Conference, what I mean is the title of the conference was literally the Revolutionary Socialism Conference. Now, this is the homepage of the Firebrand Collective that was archived back when this conference took place, so we would always have access to it. So when I say this conference was called the Revolutionary Socialism Conference, that's literally the name of the conference. I'm not just being colloquial. That's literally the name of the conference. Revolutionary Socialism Conference towards a revolutionary party. And so that's what the conference was about. And you can see this was the old schedule. And so we've actually watched a bunch of these already. We've watched Building Revolutionary Organization Today. That was on Socialism Saturday. This is the presentation in which Tom Alter said, called to overthrow the government. And then he talked about being a Texas State University professor. And so we got him fired from his job for the first time since the McCarthy era. We got a tenured college professor fired from their job over being a communist. No big deal or nothing. No big deal. I only did something that hasn't been done since the McCarthy era. No big deal. I never get any credit for my work. No one else does what I do. I literally get communist college professors fired in a task that has not been completed since the McCarthy era, and I don't get any credit. I'm just saying. I get no credit. I get no respect. No one cares. The only people who know about this are us. Conservative influencers still think that white people are the biggest victims in all of the world, and I'm literally getting communist college professors fired and no one effing cares. I'm literally trying to save the world over here. Whatever. So we watched that presentation on Socialism Saturday this past week if you missed it, but then we've been going back through some of these other presentations as well. We watched this one on Tuesday, confronting the rights attacks on gender, trans liberation, and reproductive justice. We watched this one yesterday, understanding and fighting fascism in the far right. And now we're going over here to this one, communist abolitionism. ACAB includes capitalism. What is that? What does ACAB mean? Pop quiz for the chat. Let's see how many of you have been paying attention. What does ACAB mean? You see ACAB graffitied all over the place. If I ever showed you guys my photos from the Portland Ice facility of all the graffiti around the Portland Ice facility, ACAB was everywhere. You guys know ACAB means all cops are bastards. All cops are bastards. All cops are bastards. Anytime you see ACAB, that is a call for police abolition. If you want to know where the idea to abolish the police and defund the police comes from, oh, shockingly, it's the radical revolutionary far left. Yes, sometimes they say 1312 because ACAB, A is the first letter, B is the second letter, and C is the third letter of the alphabet. So sometimes you'll see the code 1312. That also means ACAB because abolishing the police, abolishing prisons is like one of the top issues on the left. Because just practically speaking, if you're trying to overthrow the government, you need to get people out of the way that might, try to stop you from overthrowing the government. To the far left, the police are the protectors of capitalism, the managers of capitalism. When the far left says the police, they don't just mean like the cops. They also mean ICE. They also mean DHS. They mean anyone that's doing immigration enforcement. They mean potentially the army, the military, stuff like that. So they want to abolish all police and everything even remotely associated with the police. They also want to abolish all prisons because the left believes that once they abolish capitalism, because the left believes that capitalism causes all crime or most of the crime. So they believe that once we abolish capitalism and everyone has access to all the resources that we need, then there will be no more crime. And ergo, therefore, we don't need any more prisons and we don't need the police anymore because when you abolish capitalism, you abolish private property ownership. They believe that the police are the managers or the protectors of private property. And that's really all they do. You're going to hear them talk about this a lot today in this presentation. And so if you get rid of private property, you don't need the police. If you get rid of all crime because you've gotten rid of capitalism, you don't need any prisons. That is the logic of the left around abolishing the police, defunding the police. This is one of the issues on the left that is just talked about all the time, constantly, perpetually, applied in any number of different ways. It is not, generally speaking, one of my favorite topics to talk about, to be honest, just because I feel like I've heard it all before over and I'm so fucking sick of it. It's like with the Free Palestine stuff. Like when the left was really into the Free Palestine stuff, they talked about almost nothing except for Palestine for like a good 2 effing years. How much Free Palestine, especially in the first year, how much Free Palestine stuff did we have to listen to? And it's just like after a while, the left is incredibly consistent about what they say and do. And so they're just saying the same thing over and over and over again. And after a while, you listen to like your dozenth Free Palestine presentation, and I'm like, let me just bang my head on the wall because I can't take hearing the same thing anymore. And I feel the same way about abolish the police because it's the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. But we're going to watch it anyway. Do you want to know why we're going to watch it? ad. You know why I'm getting an ad? You know why I'm getting an ad? Because I'm logged in under the wrong YouTube account. Ad. God damn it. I'm logged in under a different YouTube account. The reason that we are watching this presentation is because Brian Bean gave it. And I got to tell you guys, Reagan and I knew. Reagan and I called this. Reagan and I are Brian Bean aficionados, okay? We have listened to Brian Bean on many, many, many occasions. Reagan really likes Brian. Yeah, you know what? I didn't want to say it. I didn't actually want to say it. I didn't want to say it. I was actually originally going to say this. Reagan really likes Brian Bean. Reagan really likes Brian Bean. I'm just saying. So when Reagan and I saw this this presentation title on their schedule, we're like, that's gonna be Brian Bean. And they didn't announce the presenters ahead of time or anything. We just know enough about this whole space to know that when we see that particular presentation title, ACAB includes capitalism, we know that's going to be Brian Bean. And lo and behold, it was in fact Brian Bean doing the presentation, which we called. We knew it was going to be him. A, because we've heard about him talk about this before. B, because he has a new book out on exactly this topic. C, he works with organizations that are friendly to the people that we're putting on this conference. So the combination of, we are basically the super sleuths of the socialist internet. We know everything about every major socialist activist. So we put it together. We're like, that's got to be Brian Bean. And we're going to get some cool stuff. Because, you know, the thing about Brian Bean and why we like him so very much is that he talks about overthrowing the government all the time. Brian Bean loves talking about overthrowing the government in like every presentation he does, and he doesn't give a fuck. He says this all the fucking time. And so I'm going to be honest, I actually don't really remember what he said in this presentation, but Reagan DM'd me last night and she was like, Karlyn, we should watch that presentation because I took a lot of notes during it and I have a lot of notes for timestamps. And I was like, all right, Reagan, all right, you know, you're the boss, basically. And we'll watch the presentation and we'll make all the fucking clips. You guys should see how many clips I have sitting on my desktop right now that I haven't exported yet. Like, I have so many clips from the last couple days. It's unbelievable. This will be a good project for me to do on the plane as I'm drinking, I think. Anyway, so that's what we're going to be watching today. I just want to remind people, if you want to support the work I'm doing, the very best way to do it is over on the Substack. That is Karlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. You can sign up for a membership, $8 a month, $80 a year. I really would appreciate it. My work is 100% funded by people like you. And without your support, I can't continue to do this. I can't go undercover at things like I'm doing this weekend. By the way, this weekend, I'm actually really, really excited about this because I'm going to get the opportunity. There's a couple things I'm going to do on my super secret trip. And of course, I have to talk about this vaguely because I can't tell you where I'm going, because that would give away the surprise. There's going to be some leftist watching this or some conservative retard that's going to try to sabotage it, whatever. So I have to speak in generalities. But one of the things I will tell you guys is there are a couple things that I'm doing on this little adventure. And one of the things I'm doing, I'm going to have the opportunity to purchase some historical communist like propaganda that's really fucking old and really rare and really cool. And so the reason that I can go to things, and one of the things I'm trying to do, and this is something for the Center for Left-Wing Studies, which is of course the nonprofit arm of what I'm doing, is one of the things I'm doing with the Center for Left-Wing Studies is you guys would not believe the amount of communist and socialist like propaganda and like not just like contemporary stuff. I have like historical stuff. I have like rare historical stuff that I've gotten in communist bookstores and things like that on my travels and stuff. And so one of the things I want to do is I want to archive all of this stuff to make it available to the public. So for instance, when I was in Seattle, Average Person and I went on a little like adventure where we went all over Seattle and we went to a bunch of used bookstores. And one of the used bookstores we went to, they had a whole pile of old communist magazines that are really hard to find, that you can't even find on eBay or anything like that. So like I have a stack of like old communist magazines from the 70s that's like this high, that is like you can't find this stuff anywhere else. And if we're talking about creating resources to really be serious about investigating the left wing in America, the evolution of the left in America. I want to start collecting this stuff, and maybe we make our own little fucking museum about this stuff. And we do all, because here's the thing, the left is already doing this. The left has archives and collections of all of this stuff that they use for propaganda purposes. I want us to have an archive, and I want us to have a robust collection of this stuff that we are using to expose what's been going on for decades and decades and decades and decades and decades. So I do already have a bunch of old stuff that's like sitting in my office in boxes and things that I really want to get out and have displayed, and I want to have it archived on the website so that we can all look at it and we can all research this stuff and we can all kind of like enjoy it and appreciate it and help to deepen our understanding of like what's going on. You realized I sold out an ACT UP historical zine a few months ago. I was still, yeah, see, it's cool when you find this stuff. And so one of the things I'm going to be, it's sold out everywhere. Dang. Cover charge. I love it when people pay cover charges. Thank you for the cover charge for the class. Did I display this other one too? My Google email. Thank you. Credit for your service. I do appreciate that super chat as well. So, no, they already have one. They're not starting one. Berkeley already has a Center for Right-Wing Studies. I know that because I based the name of my Center for Left-Wing Studies on the Center for Right-Wing Studies. It already exists. The Berkeley Center for Right-Wing Studies has existed for years and years and years and years and years. That was the entire inspiration for this. Anyway, so this weekend, I'm going to have the opportunity to purchase some really old, really cool pieces of communist propaganda. And the reason that I can do this stuff is because you guys fund the work I'm doing. You guys allow me to do it when you send in super chats, when you subscribe to my content, and even when you make these, you can make a tax deductible donation to the Center for Left-Wing Studies if you want to. That's all, that's fair as well. But if you guys want me to buy, listen, here's the deal. The more super chats you guys send in today, the more old communist propaganda I'm going to be able to buy this weekend because I pay out of pocket for that shit. I don't even take a reimbursement. Technically, I could take a reimbursement from the Center for Left-Wing Studies, but I don't because I want that money to go somewhere else. Yo, 5 gifted channel memberships from OC. Thank you for the gifted channel memberships. Congrats to everyone who got one. Really appreciate it, bro. Yeah, you guys can do mutual aid. If you guys send me money, I will go and I will buy really cool commie propaganda to come back and to show everyone. Thank you, Grim, for the $10. I do appreciate it for the mind expansion class. Awesome. Awesome. Another way you guys can support the work I'm doing and get a cool discount is by heading over to the Red Menace Supply Company. That is my merchandise store. That is redmenacesupply.com. Let me just put the link in the chat here so people can find it. That's not the link I wanted to copy. Hang on. This should also be in the description below. There you go on Rumble. There you go on YouTube. Average person says, can you wear the they that? I actually, yeah, that's actually, yes, actually, unironically, yes, I will be wearing that hat. I was actually thinking about that the other day. Anyway, don't give it away though. Mutual aid fund, fascist fund. Exactly. Thank you, Doug. I appreciate it. Mutual aid for commie propaganda. See, this is how mutual aid works, guys. You give me money, I go buy cool shit, and then we archive it and we create our own museum of left-wing studies, propaganda, and stuff like that. How cool is that? Anyway, if you guys want some sweet anti-communist merch, head over to the Red Menace Supply Company merchandise store. That is redmenacesupply.com. And for the month of December, I am bringing back my 6 favorite designs. James in with the $50 super chat. Thank you, James, for that, for something really cool, really old, really communist and unique. One of the things I want to buy is like $300, just so you guys know. I'm going to buy something really cool for $300. There's also a couple $150 things I want to buy so that we can create our, I'm actually going to a place where they supply museums with archive material. Like this is the cool shit I'm going to have access to this week. I'm really excited about it. OC, I appreciate you. I really appreciate you, OC. Thank you so much for the support. No, we're not doing Nick today. We're doing other stuff today, Suzanne. Okay. Yeah, and I thought, see, you know what? Listen, if we're buying old shit, sometimes you got to spend some money to buy some old stuff, man. but luckily a lot of the stuff I want to buy is much cheaper than those things. They're just a couple more pricey things, but I'm like, I'm prepared to spend money, man. I'm bringing an extra suitcase. I'm gonna make sure I have extra room in my bag. Anyway, to celebrate the month of December, I'm bringing back 6 of my most favorite designs in the Red Menace Supply Company, designs that were like limited edition and stuff like that. So you can only get these 6 designs in the month of December in the Red Menace Supply Company. If you spend $100 or more, you get automatically 25% off your whole order. So basically, if you buy 4 of my t-shirts, you get 1 for free, or you can stock up on other merch as well. We've got the Mickey Whiteness Means Capitalism design. We've got the Soup Can Whiteness Means Capitalism design, which has always been one of my favorites, and I feel like it's a really underrated design that I did because I think it's really cool. It's obviously Warhol inspired, and I like that sort of thing. We've got the Men Are Not Women design. I legitimately wear the Men Are Not Women shirt like all the time. I also love the Wear in 1984 design, the Real Marxism design. Wear the Real Marxism design is fun. I love wearing the Real Marxism design into Whole Foods. Because I do bougie grocery shopping and I buy expensive stuff at Whole Foods. Anyway, so the reason I love going to Whole Foods is I wear the Real Marxism design into Whole Foods, and the people who are working there, they get so excited when they see the word Marxism, and they run right over to me because they're all fucking communists. And so they run right over to me because they're so excited because they saw Marxism, and then they actually look at the shirt and they start to understand that I'm saying that Marxism results in a massive pile of skulls, and you can see their face drop in real time. They're so excited to talk to me. Yeah, and then I'm like, psych. They're so excited though, and then their face just drops and they're like, oh, and then they're not excited anymore. But it's so funny. It's so funny. Then we got the Be an Outcast design, which is just cool. All of those are available in the Red Menace Supply Company. You can get all the other cool stuff too. The McCarthy designs. We got some cool, just general kind of t-shirt designs. We got the Plague Doctors. We've even got the Center of Left Wing Studies logo looking cool on a t-shirt. All that stuff is available in redmenacesupply.com. And of course, all purchases do go to support the work I'm doing. And I really do appreciate your guys' support. Thank you, Dan, for the mutual aid donation. I really do appreciate it. Awesome. Awesome. Okay, what else do I have to talk about? Oh, a couple things. A couple things before we get started. I have to talk about this. I have to. Hang on. So today, there's been all these announcements all over Twitter that the FBI has finally, and at long last, arrested the pipe bomber from January 6th. And oh, wouldn't you know it, all the conservative influencers are like, he was in Antifa. Conservatives, I'm very, very, very sorry. I hate to disappoint you. There is no way in this universe the pipe bomber was in Antifa. There is no way in this universe that the pipe bomber was in Antifa. Do you know how I know emphatically that the pipe bomber is not in Antifa? Does anyone have any idea? Pop quiz for the chat. We study the far left on this channel. Does anyone want to guess how I know beyond any shadow of a doubt that the pipe bomber was not in Antifa? David with the super chat for the door. So glad you appear for us today. Hey, I appreciate that, David. Thank you. Thank you. Antifa doesn't work alone. That's very true. That's very true. What else? It's an individual action. Do you guys remember we've actually got communists on video saying that they have a problem with individual terrorism, but it's not the terrorism part they have a problem with, it's the individual part. Communists are not opposed to terrorism, they're just opposed to individual terrorism. That's very true. They don't do lone wolf actions. Yup, that's all very true. But I've even got a better reason that I know this wasn't Antifa. And I posted about this earlier. I said, yeah, I don't know who needs to hear this, but if Antifa had actually done this, they would have published their report doing it on anarchist websites. They do this stuff all the time with illegal things they do. Anyone who's saying this was Antifa is just conservative spin, because guys, when Antifa does things, they publish after action reports on their websites. I cannot emphasize this enough. How do you run a highly decentralized organization? You have to communicate across mediums that they all have access to. One of the things that Antifa does is they literally do after action reports on their websites. What is an after action report, you ask? Well, it's this thing where when you do something, you then write a report about doing that thing and the things that you learned and the things that went well and the things that didn't go well, so that you can do it better next time. David, in with the second super chat for $50 this time. Thank you, David. I really do appreciate that. Very generous. I appreciate it. So guys, if Antifa had planted that pipe bomb, I'm sorry, there would have been, and maybe it wouldn't have been Crime Think. Okay, fine. It doesn't necessarily have to be Crime Think. There are millions of anarchist websites, maybe not millions. There are a lot of anarchist websites out there. You could look at anarchist news. You could look at like places like No Blogs that have a ton of anarchist websites. I promise you, if Antifa had actually done this January 6th pipe bombing thing, someone would have published something about it somewhere, because it's not like they're even afraid of publishing about doing illegal things. They publish about doing illegal things all the time. This is the home Crime Think. For people who don't know, Crime Think is one of the main publishing arms of Antifa. They're one of the main propaganda producers of Antifa. Crime Think is all over the place with propaganda. Their propaganda is out in the ecosystem. These guys are the ones that drive the messaging. These guys are the ones that are the very first to publish, like, we did this thing. If you follow Crime Think, you will instantly be ahead of like every conservative influencer, because on Crime Think, they publish what they're doing like months and months and months ahead of time. So they say, here are our plans, here's what we're doing. And what happens is Antifa is a decentralized organization. So there are like thousands of Antifa cells all over the country. They don't necessarily talk to each other, but they all read places like Crime Think. So if you publish something on Crime Think, even if there's no hierarchy in Antifa, if you publish something on this website, that gets to everyone because they're all reading the same websites. So how do you coordinate actions among a highly decentralized group of people? You publish on a website that they're all reading. No one is giving an order. No one is saying you have to go do X, Y, B, and Z. But if you are publishing, here are the tactics that we're engaging in, and here's the successes that we've had on websites where all of the different groups are reading these websites and distributing material from these websites, then you have a way to communicate in a decentralized way to hand out marching orders without necessarily it being a directive. It's not an order. It's a, here's what we're all going to do, and you're all going to read the same documents. That's what this is. So look at the homepage of Crime Think literally right now. What's on this page? We have down here in the corner, protesters clash with ICE agents again in the Twin Cities. So this is an after action report of anti-ICE protesting in Minnesota. We have here resisting ICE in Chicago, reflections on the protests at the ICE facility in Broadview. So this is an after action report on the Broadview anti-ICE protest. And look right here. What do we see right there? What do we see right there? A giant ass fucking whistle? A whistle? Oh wow. If only we knew that Antifa was using whistles to try to coordinate with ICE. So we got this one, when the feds come to your door, standing up to ICE, a guide from the Chicago organizers. Hey, why does this seem so familiar to me? Oh, wait, could it be that like literally back at the beginning of November, this tweet is on November 10th. I posted a clip from the Zine Librarians Conference where they were talking about doing anti-ICE activism with those fucking whistles. Hang on, just in case people are new. This is what I told people was happening a month ago.
Chicago for the going on in your, I know in Chicago and other communities with ICE there, zines and other DIY information resources have been very important for communities to share resources without being surveilled. So would anybody care to share about how they're using or seeing zines as tools for resistance in your current context?
There. I guess I would just say, I'm Cynthia. I run Zine Club Chicago here in Chicago for the past 7 years. And I don't have a library background. I'm a social worker and bookstore worker. And I think, first of all, the thing we've been talking about with making sure people feel empowered, that their voice is important, and them participating however they can is really important, is really part of our framework. And the thing we're really seeing in the past year in particular, getting people together, that community building aspect, no matter what type of zine project we're doing. We do formal workshops and artist talks, but where we're seeing a lot of community building is our informal zine making activities we do once a month. We did one in January. Everybody gets together, whether they're new to zines or people who've been doing zines for a while, and makes a page. And we have a theme. And our theme for January was resistance. And people made amazing zines, and the zine pages and the zine that came out of it is something we've been using to share with people. But I think what was just as important were the conversations happening at the tables, where people were talking about protests and talking about other zines they knew that they could distribute in the community. And every month when we've been gathering, whether it's people sharing the How to Report ICE zines or telling folks about, there's a big movement here to assemble whistle kits that include a zine that was made by a local collective. You know, I think it's happening in LA too, but we're trying to distribute whistles throughout communities so people can use them to let their neighbors know that ICE is in the area. And the conversations around other ways of getting involved have been really powerful. And
so a month ago, when we infiltrated the Zine Librarians Unconference, we recorded them talking about using zines to create these whistle kits that they were handing out in Chicago, and using zines to teach people the secret whistle code that they were using to like warn people when ICE was showing up in their neighborhoods, so that people could be protected, so that they wouldn't get deported. I posted this. This was on November 8th, 2025, so almost a month ago. Hang on. I'm pretty sure hang on. Oh gosh. I'm pretty sure I was one of the first people to actually report on this whistle thing. And we did it because we had footage from a secretly recorded event where they were talking about doing it. Well, guess what? Now we're seeing the whistle thing show up on Antifa's website. I'm going to give you guys one better. Let's click into this. Let's click into this Antifa whistle thing. And we're not going to read the whole thing right now. I do actually want to do a read through of this at some point. I just want to show you guys. Look what I've got here. Look what else they're doing. Look what else they're doing. Salute. Huh. Why does that sound familiar to me? Why does that sound familiar to me? Oh, wait. Do you guys know? One in the chat, if you have seen people on Twitter say something to the effect of, Karlyn doesn't even go undercover with Antifa. Karlyn just goes to these stupid book fairs, and she's lying when she says she goes undercover with Antifa. Has anyone ever heard someone say this about me? I swear it's related back to this. I'm making a point here. So one in the chat, let me actually put the chat on the screen so you guys can see. One in the chat, if you guys have heard retards on Twitter say, oh, you don't have to pay attention to Karlyn. She doesn't even go undercover with Antifa. She just goes to these stupid book fairs, and these are public events that anyone can go to, and blah, 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 blah. All right. Well, look at this salute thing. This is currently published on Antifa's website right now. We've been talking about this for a while. Do you know how we've been talking about it for a while? This is a handout that I got at an anti-ICE organizing meeting in a fucking park with no surveillance in New York City back in, when did I get this? When did I go to New York? Was this in September? Something like that? Yeah, it was in September, I think. So I went to an anti-ICE, when I went to that stupid book fair in New York that people think that anyone can go to, the other thing I did is I went to an anti-ICE organizing meeting where I got this handout. Hey, guess what was in this handout that they were handing out at the anti-ICE thing in New York City? Oh, wait, where have I seen this before? Where have I seen this before? That looks familiar. Doesn't that look familiar? though. The point is that when Antifa does something, even if that thing is illegal, because I learned how to slash ISIS tires at that thing I went to in New York. And oh, by the way, this isn't even the only time we've been hearing them talking about slashing ISIS tires, because look at what I released. Look at what I released this past week. They're making videos talking about how to slash ISIS tires. I'm just saying that when Antifa does something, they talk about it publicly. When Antifa commits some sort of big high-profile act, they publish about it publicly on anarchist websites that usually only other anarchists read. So there is no way in this universe, I'm sorry, there is like actually zero effing reality. I don't care what any of these conservative influencers say. They're all saying that this was Antifa, this was Antifa, this was Antifa. There is no way it was Antifa because there was no publishing about it on Antifa websites. If you want to know what the far left is going to do or what they have done, you have to look at the patterns of behavior that show up, because the patterns of behavior are incredibly consistent. If you know what they've done in the past, you know what they're going to do now, because they don't change their strategy based on conservative whining on the internet. They do the same thing all the time. When something doesn't work, they do an after action report. They talk about why it didn't work. They then change their strategy. They're highly strategic about what they're doing. And so no conservatives. I'm sorry. This wasn't Antifa. Anyway, that's all I really have to say about that. Hey, you guys want to watch this video? You guys want to watch the Brian B video? That's why Lodenthal was smirking? Yeah, exactly. And they all know it too. By the way, Antifa right now, Michael Lodenthal, who's like the Antifa professor, Antifa on Blue Sky is making fun of conservatives over this thing. They're actually making fun of them. They're saying, oh, conservatives are about to get this one wrong in a big way. And they're actually making fun of them. So that's the reality in which we live today. What a time to be alive. Anyway, we are going to get into the Brian Bean All Cops Are Bastards presentation. As a reminder, guys, we are doing this because I'm working on a project to build out a big-ass dictionary of clips and things. And so we're going to take our time with this presentation. We're going to go a little bit slower than we normally do. We're going to be making a bunch of clips from this presentation. The reason that we are making clips is to create resources that we can use to educate the general public and make it really, really simple for people to learn what the far left believes, learn the far left language, stuff like that. That is why we're doing this exercise of going back through these old presentations and watching them. Also, it's just kind of cool that I've never really shown this footage in public before, and I am literally the only one with a full recording of this presentation, so that's pretty great. Hey, Nick, thanks for being a member of the channel for 38 months. Salute is a very specific protocol used in the Army and is used exactly this way. Whoever made that is likely prior military. You know, you're not the first person I've heard that from, Nick, and that's right. That's absolutely correct. So this is a video that I secretly recorded a couple months ago. No one else has access to this footage except for us. So we're just going to enjoy it. We're going to enjoy it. Guys, please make sure you mount the like button if you have not.
The body scanner reveals the brutal truth about your body that your regular scale will never tell you. For weeks, my
talk a lot. Brian, if you are ready, take it away.
Recording in progress.
I am. Maria, can you hear me okay? Great. I see Jason. Cool. Thanks, comrades, for inviting me. I'm happy to be here. I'm from potentially.
Brian, I don't think we can hear you, comrade.
Oh, you cannot hear me? Oh, Jason is giving me a thumbs up. So maybe it's okay, as there's other people.
Oh, no,
okay.
We got you. We got you. Yeah, mine was lagging. My bad.
Okay, great. Cool. Well, what did I say? Thanks for having me. Coming from soon to be occupied Chicago. And so that's always fun. But for my talk to kick things off, I'm going to start by telling some stories, and then I'm going to get into discussion of the function of the police, and then what are the ramifications for how we understand their function for the socialist and the abolitionist project. I'm not going to get too much into immediate what do we do now type questions. Hopefully, perhaps that can come up in conversation if people want to go there, or we can stay on coming to the big picture questions, which are going to be the main focus of my comments. So first, some stories. In the year 1800, one of the predecessors of the modern police called the Thames River Police was created. Its point was to regulate.
Pop quiz for the chat. Pop quiz for the chat before Brian Bean gets into his spiel. What does the far left believe is the origin of the police in America? The far left believes that the police in America specifically have a very, 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 very specific origin. What do they believe the origin of the police is? Average person in with the correct answer. He believes that the police in the United States were created from slave catchers, that slave catchers were the first police. Because slavery, of course, was created by capitalism, capitalism being private property ownership. Slavery was the ownership of people as private property. The police are the managers of private property. Therefore, ergo, they were the slave catchers back in the day, because the responsibility of the slave catchers was to manage the private property for their bourgeois plantation masters. And that is why the origin of the police to the far left is slave catchers. And that is why they say the police are a racist institution, because they believe the origin of the police was the institution of slavery, which of course was created by capitalism. You know what? Unironically, this thing that I'm going to this weekend, there's old propaganda in this regard. You're gonna love this stuff I'm gonna get this weekend. You're gonna die. So does everyone understand what I just said? And I want to make sure the new people understand, if you've never watched Abolish the Police content before. Do you guys understand what I just said about the origin of the police in the United States being slavery? And that's why the left always says the police are a racist institution, because the left believes that slavery literally created the police. Does everyone in the chat understand? 1 in the chat if you understand, 2 in the chat if you're still confused. It's okay to still be confused. I won't yell at you unless you're being an asshole. This is an abolish the prisons presentation. This is the same thing. Abolish the police is the same as abolish prisons. Okay. Looks like people get it. Cool.
And order and repress the dock workers at the Port of London. The dock workers made up roughly a third of London's adult workforce, and a quarter of the trade moving through the port originated from, of course, the institution of racist chattel slavery in the Americas. So the Thames River Police was created for that purpose. 3 months after the creation, a crowd of workers attempted to burn down their office with the police inside. In September 1829, the first modern police force was established in London. They were met immediately with protests marching on Parliament against this new institution, declaring, the slogans in the banner said, "Liberty or death, the time has at last arrived. Englishmen, will you put up with it?" Riots broke out in the industrial city of Birmingham, and a public assembly declared the police, quote, "a bullying and unconstitutional force." A few years later, a London cop was killed trying to break up a protest, and a jury declared it a justifiable homicide. Frederick Ingalls, writing 2 years after the creation of the Manchester Police, wrote that, quote, "Every week in Manchester, police are beaten by workers, and last year a station house was stormed." Organizing against the invention of the institution in a city in Wales, declared that, quote, this is from a pamphlet at the time, "hope that the truncheons and spies may henceforth be consigned to oblivion, along with rusty old iron, rotten timber, and broken pipes, as useless relics of bygone days." In the first decade of their existence in England, they were deployed against the Chartist movement, considered by many to be the first working class mass movement. Chartist leader William Lovett, in response to some police being injured in Birmingham riots, declared that, quote, "I heard that several of them were wounded, and at the same time thought that the people were justified in repelling such despotic and bloodthirsty power by any and every means at their disposal, because I believe that the institution of a police force is an infringement on the Constitution and liberties possessed by our ancestors." At the time of the creation of the police, even some conservative figures opposed the creation of the police, calling them, quote, "detestable, spies," and, quote, "mercenaries of the executive." So class anger against the police is as old as the police themselves. And in those first decades, the people weren't asking for body cameras or oversight review boards or better training. They wanted the police gone. And throughout their unsavory history, the police are continually detonators of explosive struggle. So in this country, probably the two largest instances of riotous protests were first the wave of urban rebellions in the last half of the 1960s decade, where nearly 2,000 urban rebellions tore through the streets in response to the grievances of anti-Black racism, but in most cases sparked by police brutality from Watts to Detroit to Newark. The second, of course, was the 2020 protest wave triggered by the police murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. And internationally...
Wait. What do you think we're doing here? Person just came in and said my channel's being reported. What exactly do you think we're doing here? Please explain yourself. You want to come in and be a dick on my channel? We're putting you on the spot. What do you think we're doing here? Let's see how smart you are. Oh, you gave, guys. This person gave my sponsor a bad review. Oh no. Who's my sponsor? Who did you give a bad review to? Who's my sponsor that you gave a bad review to, Sora? Sora has reported me to the manager, but Sora doesn't seem to know that there's that I'm the fucking manager. All right. Well, obviously we're not going to get an answer, so we're just going to ban the retard and move on. I'm deeply concerned though about my sponsor getting a bad review. What the fuck?
We see how the regional conflagration of 2011's Arab Spring was about the manifold grievances around democracy and inequality, but it was sparked to life by police violence committed against Mohamed Bouazizi in Tunisia, the murder of Khaled Said in Egypt, and the torture of young adults in Syria. From Oaxaca, Mexico in 2006 to Wuhan, China in 2011, to South Africa in the 1980s, to the uprising in Indonesia, burning down government buildings ongoing right now in response to the murder of Afan Kanyaran, all demonstrate that organizing against and in response to the police have tremendous explosive potential that can uncork all the miseries and lack of democracy of capitalist society. There's a French protest chant that's commonly heard in demonstrations there that goes, "Tout le monde déteste la police." Everybody hates the police. But if you more literally translate it, it means all the world hates the police. But there's another side to that, because it'd be incorrect to argue that ACAB is the dominant political position in the global working class. Per Gallup polls, Americans' quote confidence in police is still at the lowest it's been in 30 years, but still a slim majority, 51%, have confidence.
Hannaford to go. Unmatched care and convenience.
Hang
Hello,
on.
beautiful.
Hang on. We're not fucking doing this.
And consciousness is mixed. For example, a majority of Black Chicago.
Hang on. I need to log into my YouTube account with the premium. Hang on. Give me 1 sec. I'm at 338. Okay, I just need to log into my YouTube account with the premium. I'm not going to go through ads on this entire thing just because I forgot to switch my fucking YouTube account. Hang on, 338. Okay, we're back. We have premium now. No more ads. I fixed it. Let's keep going.
This mixed consciousness is partly due to the intense saturation of pro-police propaganda, from school indoctrination of officer friendly to the fact that 50% of all TV scripted dramas are police shows.
You can't use brave.
But it's also simple capitalist realism. When people don't see an alternative and lack other resources to deal with community violence, mental health crisis, domestic violence, crime, etc., it's actually in many ways understandable that it's hard for many people to see a world without police. So why is it that? Why are police such an explosive tension, such an obvious figure of violence, at the same time that this relatively recent phenomenon, less than 200 years old, is seen by many as essential to the workings of society? In my opinion, the only way to coherently answer that is to understand that police function as a special institution of capitalist society, the main tool of the ruling class used to—
Hang on. Okay, that's a clip. Hang on. Everyone pay attention. Yeah, George Soros just received a strongly worded letter from that bitch in the chat earlier. Okay, everyone pay attention. Guys, the only browser I can use to play sound in StreamYard is Chrome. So there is no other using other browsers. This is the only browser I can use. Everyone settle down. The problem's fixed.
There's an obvious figure of violence. At the same time, this relatively recent phenomenon, less than 200 years old, is seen by many as essential to the workings of society. In my opinion, the only way to coherently answer that is to understand that police function as a special institution of capitalist society, the main tool of the ruling class used to maintain and reproduce their rule. What follows from that is that the only coherent way to think about getting rid of the police is connected to challenging the capitalist state. And inversely, if you are desiring to end the system of capitalism, we all come up against, the need then is to abolish the police. So what is the role of the police? What is their social function in capitalism? And then from—
Hang on. That's a great clip. That clip was beautiful. Do you guys understand what he just said? When Brian Bean is saying the capitalist state, what does he mean? We're going to listen to that again. I want to make sure people understand this. Because this is the crux of why the left does not support the police and why they want to abolish the police. What does Brian Bean mean when he says the capitalist state? He means the U.S. government. Explicitly, the United States government. I know I'm hammering this point home a lot lately, but I need people to learn how to code switch in their head. Anytime you hear the left talking about the capitalist state, they are talking about the government. They are talking about the Constitution. You cannot get rid of the capitalist state without overthrowing the government and abolishing the Constitution. We need to start saying what this is. This is not talking about some nebulous state. This is not talking about the economic system of capitalism and how it's unfair and crony capitalism. That's not what they're talking about. When they are talking about abolishing the police, they are talking about doing that because they believe the police protect the capitalist state being the United States government and the Constitution. We have got to start being explicit about what they're calling for. He is calling for the violent overthrow of the U.S. government. Listen again.
And 200 years old is seen by many as essential to the workings of society. In my opinion, the only way to coherently answer that is to understand that police function as a special institution of capitalist society, the main tool of the ruling class used to maintain and reproduce their rule.
The police function as a special institution of capitalist society, the thing used by the ruling class, the capitalist, the bourgeois, the private property owner, to sustain their rule. Capitalism cannot exist without the protection of the police. This has nothing to do with the police killing black people. I need people to understand this. This has nothing to do with Derek Chauvin killing George Floyd. Has nothing to do with it. It has to do with the police are the protectors of capitalism. The police are the protectors of private property. The police are the protectors of the ruling class. That is why they want to abolish the police. Thanks, Malcolm, for the entrance fee. Paying close attention. I really do appreciate that. Is there a glossary of terms? We're working on it. That's what we're working on. That's what we're doing right now. We're working on it.
Coherently answer that is to understand that police function as a special institution of capitalist society, the main tool of the ruling class used to maintain and reproduce their rule. What follows from that is that the only coherent way to think about getting rid of the police is connected to challenging the capitalist state. And inversely, if you are desiring to end the system of capitalism, we all come up against, the need then is to abolish the police.
We need to abolish the police in order to abolish capitalism and the capitalist state. And I'm going to say this again. We need to abolish the police to overthrow the government and the United States Constitution. That's what he's saying. Last time I'm going to let it play through.
Rule. What follows from that is that the only coherent way to think about getting rid of the police is connected to challenging the capitalist state. And inversely, if you are desiring to end the system of capitalism, we all come up against, the need then is to abolish the police. So what is the role of the police? What is their social function in capitalism? And then from that, what conclusions can we draw from that? I think first, it's always important to point out that their function isn't to solve or prevent crime. I'm sure this is something that I don't need to prove to the people in this room, but something we always encounter. It's the predominant myth. And so it's always important to kind of have those arguments on hand. The concept of crime, first of all, is a class concept. World-threatening pollution and turn.
I need to clip this. This is going to be just like one long fucking clipped presentation from Brian Bean. I know this.
The need then is to abolish the police. So what is the role of the police? What is their social function in capitalism? And then from that, what conclusions can we draw from that? I think first, it's always important to point out that their function isn't to solve or prevent crime. I'm sure this is something that I don't need to prove to the people in this room, but something we always encounter. It's the predominant myth. And so it's always important to kind of have those arguments on hand. The concept of crime, first of all, is a class concept. World-threatening pollution, internment camps, slavery, and war, all conducted by the ruling class, are usually legal, while other social phenomenon that make up 80% of all arrests, like vagrancy, informal economies, etc., are considered illegal. Even things as innocuous as crossing an arbitrary border, of course, is criminalized if you're a working class person while corporations freely flit around the globe. Criminal justice, as Bolshevik legal theorist Yevgeny Pashukanis put it, is, quote, organized class terror. So police don't prevent crime either. Any simple review of studies on police force, size, and crime rates, and I go over this in my book, finds that the correlation between police presence and crime rates is, quote, statistically insignificant, and they do not play a, quote, independent role. And all these findings are not from revolutionary abolitionists, but, you know, wonky sociologists. No offense to sociologists in the room. And they don't solve crime. One study found that police solve serious crime less than 2% of the time. So statistically, that means you have a better chance of pulling an ace of spades out of a deck of cards on the first try than a cop solving a crime. And of course, they're not just ineffective, but often make things worse. If you look at often the deadly impact of their intervention in crisis situations like mental health and domestic violence, police aren't a solution to social problems, they are a social problem. So what's their function? It's not about crime.
Hang on. We're going to go back and continue to clip this. I just want to grab that clip, and then we're going to go back and break this stuff down. Because Brian Bean just said a lot. Okay? Let me go back. We're going to break all this down now. Because when I'm clipping, I can't pause and break it down, but then we can go back later.
Insignificant. Even things as innocuous, it's the predominant myth. And so it's between that, what conclusions can we draw from
Okay, we're going to start here.
that? I think first, it's always important to point out that their function isn't to solve or prevent crime. I'm sure this is something that I don't need to prove to the people in this room, but something we always encounter is the.
So one of the arguments that the left makes about the police, we've already established the left believes that the police only exist to protect the bourgeois, the capitalist class, the private property owners, and the left says because of that, the police don't even actually solve any crimes. The police are only around to protect property. They don't actually solve crimes.
Predominant myth, and so it's always important to kind of have those arguments on hand. The concept of crime, first of all, is a class concept. World-threatening pollution, internment.
The concept of crime is a class concept, which means that basically capitalism dictates what is a crime and what is not a crime. So things that benefit the capitalist class are just allowed to happen because they're not considered to be crimes because capitalism creates crime. But things that don't benefit the capitalist class, those things are considered to be crimes, or things that are inconvenient to the capitalist class, those things are considered to be crimes.
Camps, slavery, and war, all conducted by the ruling class, are usually legal, while other social phenomenon that make up 80% of all arrests, like vagrancy, informal economies, etc., are considered illegal. Even things as innocuous as crossing an arbitrary border, of course, is criminalized if you're a working class.
So what he's saying there, that is an anti-ICE argument. So the left does not believe that borders should exist. The left believes that borders are only there because capitalism puts them there. They say the capitalists can cross the borders, goods and product can cross the borders, but people can't cross the borders. And the people are being restricted because capitalism is restricting the movement of people across these arbitrary borders. Well, they don't want property to exist. They don't want property to exist at all. So they don't care about property. They care about, this is what they would say. They care about people, not property.
person while corporations freely flit around the globe. Criminal justice, as Bolshevik legal theorist Yevgeny Pashikanis put it, is, quote, organized class terror. So police don't prevent crime either. Any simple review of studies on police force, size, and crime rates, and I go over this in my book, finds that the correlation between police presence and crime rates is, quote, statistically insignificant, and they do not play a, quote, independent role. And all these findings are not from revolutionary abolitionists, but, you know, wonky sociologists. No offense to sociologists in the room. And they don't solve crime. One study found that police solve serious.
The definition of capitalism is private property ownership. Private property means bourgeois property, property that you can use to create privatized individual wealth. It includes your ability to own a home, your ability to own land, your ability to own an apartment that you rent out as a landlord, your intellectual property, your private businesses, whether that private business is big or small. It also includes parental rights over your kids, because parental rights over your kids allows you to pass property from parent to child, thus keeping it privatized within the capitalist nuclear family. They do not want private property to exist. They want all property, all bourgeois property, to belong to the collective.
Crime less than 2% of the time. So statistically, that means you have a better chance of pulling an ace of spades out of a deck of cards on the first try than a cop solving a crime. And of course, they're not just ineffective, but often make things worse. If you look at often the deadly impact of their intervention in crisis situations like mental health and domestic violence, police aren't a solution to social problems, they are a social problem. So what's their function? It's not about crime. Their function is to solve a problem for the ruling class.
Hang on, I'm gonna clip this. Guys, I need people in the chat to be focused on the presentation. If you are not focused on the presentation, if you are posting something in the chat that has nothing to do with the presentation, cut it out. This is a class and this is a research group. And I understand that most places allow you to shitpost on the internet, but I do not allow shitposting in my chat when we're trying to do something serious. So please cut it out.
That means you have a better chance of pulling an ace of spades out of a deck of cards on the first try than a cop solving a crime. And of course, they're not just ineffective, but often make things worse. If you look at often the deadly impact of their intervention in crisis situations like mental health and domestic violence, police aren't a solution to social problems, they are a social problem. So what's their function? It's not about crime. Their function is to solve a problem for the ruling class that is presented to them by the system of capitalism. A solution that, to quote police theorist Sidney Herring, is to be a, quote, full-time, permanent force capable of continually asserting the power of the capitalist state up and down every street in every city. Their main job for the entirety of their existence is two things. One, patrol, and two, crowd control. Everything else is subsidiary to those two functions. And this assertion of power carried through the streets is done so with the threat of the monopoly of discretionary violence. They can choose to commit violence whenever they choose to do so. Pro-police sociologist Egon Bintner, whose work is taught in police schools, wrote that, quote, the capacity to use coercive force lends thematic unity to all police activity in the same sense in which the capacity to cure illness lends unity to everything in the medical practice. So they are, to quote Mikhail Siegel, violence workers. Now, all class societies beyond capitalism, feudalism, etc., have required some form of violence to secure their unequal systems. The police are unique and I would argue essential to capitalism. This is because of how they have been the agreed upon solution for certain problems capitalism creates for the ruling class. The solution came through a period of trial and error and experimentation that co-arose with the rise of industrial capitalism and the consolidation of the capitalist state. In my book, I spend a lot of time going through this history, but the key elements of the history is this. In order for capitalism to function, to bring great profits to those that own, the working class needs to make the machines run, and they have to be organized to do so. The cogs and gears of machinery and people are brought together in great number. This is both what is required by capitalism, and it's the greatest challenge to itself. In order to most efficiently extract the maximum profit from the labor of workers, it was necessary to assemble them all in the same place, into cities, into massive factories. But by assembling them all in the same place and forcing them to cooperate on the job, employees also increased the capacity for collective working class struggle against exploitation and tyranny. So a key function of the modern police force was, simply put, to manage this contradiction on behalf of the ruling class. So it's not simply to guard private property, which is how you often hear it sometimes, that people describe what the police role is. Because we could imagine many different ways that private property could be guarded. And indeed, many of these ways have been tried and still used to a degree with like the army, with mercenaries or private security, armed business people, etc. But to deal with the centralized grouping of the working class, to reproduce and reify its racist divisions that are positioned often in close proximity with the ruling class. So everyone still kind of lives in cities, even though, of course, you have walled subdivision and the like. You have to deal with the crowd who have been organized by capitalism. So police are there to fix this for several reasons. So why were police the decided upon better choice? One, the military logistically were expensive and difficult to maintain open occupation everywhere and all the time. It looks bad. They're better equipped at fighting, say, traditional armies and peasant wars that are in one location away from the central ability to shut down production. But armies are quite hard to respond to simultaneous social explosions in urban environments. And two, the look of open occupation usually brings about resistance. Similarly, the look of private mercenaries is an easier target of class anger than a force that is ostensibly considered a public force and that is publicly funded. An industrialist, L.C. Smith, in the early 20th century, who was arguing for the creation of the Pennsylvania State Police, described this when he said, "It's a benefit that regular people," he called them the enemy in this quote though, "see the police arrest, shoot, and kill strikers as a legalized officer of the law, as opposed to on behalf of the industry bosses. That serves their purposes very importantly." And three, it was cheaper. The cost of the repression of workers was paid for by tax money as opposed to directly by capitalists. But as we see with police foundations like those who are helping fund Atlanta's Cop City, the bosses are also very happy to shell out large amounts of money to fund their favorite tool, as long as it's still rooted in the appearance and in the funding of it being a public force. And fourth, last point, is that it attempts to draw its composition. The police tries to draw its composition from the population it polices. So different than a garrison soldier, like in Chicago.
Okay. That's enough of a clip. That's like 15 different clips in a single clip. All right, I want to go back. Sorry, I need to listen to some of this stuff again. So we're going to go back. We're going to go on a little jaunt back 5 minutes ago.
Of course, they're not just ineffective, but often make things worse if you look at often presented to them by the system of capitalism. A solution that, to quote police theorist Sidney Herring, is to be a, quote, full-time...
Okay, we are not doing this here. We are not doing this here. We are not doing this here. The goal is to understand what the left believes. I've already explained why the left believes this. This is not productive. We are not doing this here. We need to stop and break down what he said in this clip.
Permanent force capable of continually asserting the power of the capitalist state up and down every street in every city. Their main job for the entirety of their existence is two things: one, patrol, and two, crowd control. Everything else is subsidiary to those two functions. And this assertion of power carried through the streets is done so with the threat of the monopoly of discretionary violence. They can choose.
So the left believes the police have two main functions: patrol and crowd control. And that's it. And by patrol, what they're saying is they're looking out for crimes against property. Oh, yeah? Oh, yeah, you understand what he's pushing, Jamie? Explain it to us right now. Explain it to us. Show us how much you know. If you don't explain it to us correctly, you're permanently banned in the chat. So give it a good try. We're waiting for you to explain it to us. What does he believe? We're waiting. You walked into my classroom and said, I know more than you do. Okay, we're waiting. We're waiting for you to show us that you know more than we do. Person who's never been here before and probably has no fucking idea what's going on. We're waiting, Jamie. What does he believe? What is he pushing? You have 20 seconds to answer. I'm permanently banning you in my chat. We're not sitting here all day for this. What does he believe? Okay, you've already said that once. What does he believe? Explain it. You have 30 seconds to explain it before I permanently ban you in my chat. We are all sitting here patiently waiting for you to explain it to us if you know everything. 20 seconds. Fifteen seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Oh, he doesn't know. Yeah, I am going to ban you. I am going to ban you because he doesn't, guys, he doesn't even know how to spell the word genius. This is why we don't listen to conservative retards on the internet. Conservative retards say they know everything. Conservative retards act like they know everything. They disrupt classes where other people are trying to learn things. And then they don't even know how to spell basic words and have no fucking idea what they're talking about and are obviously not smart enough to be here. Go away.
Choose to commit violence whenever they choose to do so. Pro-police sociologist Egon Bintner, whose work is taught in police schools, wrote that, quote, the capacity to use coercive force lends thematic unity to all police activity in the same sense in which the capacity to cure illness lends unity to everything in the medical practice. So they are, to quote Mikhail Siegel, violence workers. Now, all class societies beyond capitalism, feudalism, etc., have required some form of violence to secure their unequal systems. The police are unique and I would argue essential to capitalism. This is because of how they have been the agreed upon solution for certain problems capitalism creates for the ruling class.
The police are unique to capitalism because capitalism created the police and the police protect the institution of capitalism.
The solution came through a period of trial and error and experimentation that co-arose with the rise of industrial capitalism and the consolidation of the capitalist state. In my book, I spend a lot of time going through this history, but the key elements of the history is this. In order for capitalism to function, to bring great profits to those that own, the working class needs to make the machines run, and they have to be organized.
This is actually really important for people to understand more broadly. This is their conception for how the capitalist system works. The working class all have to come together to be oppressed by the capitalists. So you're bringing all these people together. Someone's going to do crowd control when you bring all of these working class people together to make sure that everything functions, everyone's producing what they should, etc., etc. So I need people to listen to this.
Of the capitalist state. In my book, I spend a lot of time going through this history, but the key elements of the history is this. In order for capitalism to function, to bring great profits to those that own, the working class needs to make the machines run, and they have to be organized to do so. The cogs and gears of machinery and people are brought together in great number. This is both what is required by capitalism, and it's the greatest challenge to itself. In order to most efficiently extract the maximum profit from the labor of workers, it was necessary to assemble them all in the same place, into cities, into massive factories. But by assembling them all in the same place and forcing them to cooperate on the job, employees also increased the capacity for collective working class struggle against exploitation.
So when the capitalists brought all the workers together, and then they put these systems in place, including the police, that forced the workers to cooperate with each other so that they could produce as much profit for the capitalist class. When all of this happened, the workers started talking to each other about the material conditions that they found themselves in. And when the workers started talking to each other, because they were all brought together in the same place, they started making plans to rebel against the capitalist class. And therefore, the police were there to squelch the rebellion and the organizing of the workers. Does everyone understand? The police were there to do crowd control, to force the people who all had to work together to produce as much profit for the capitalists as possible. But once you start forcing people to work together, they start talking and they start coming up with plans and ideas. And so the police were also there to make sure the workers didn't try to overthrow the evil capitalists that were oppressing them.
factories. But by assembling them all in the same place and forcing them to cooperate on the job, employees also increased the capacity for collective working class struggle against exploitation and tyranny. So a key function of the modern police force was, simply put, to manage this contradiction on behalf of the ruling class. So it's not simply to guard private property, which is how you often hear it sometimes, that people describe what the police role is. Because we could imagine many different ways that private property could be guarded. And indeed, many of these ways have been tried and still used to a degree with like the army, with mercenaries or private.
So now I want you guys to think about what you see when the police are used in protests, and think about how the left reacts to the police being used in protests, whether they're like the anti-ICE protests or like the BLM protests or things like that. Does it make more sense to you why the left behaves the way they do towards the police when you understand that the left believes that one of the primary functions of the police is to put down these proletariat uprisings? So the left believes, and whether or not you agree with them, it doesn't really fucking matter, okay? The left believes that they are in a righteous rebellion, a righteous revolution against these evil overlords that are trying to oppress all of us. Now, again, whether or not you agree with them is immaterial. They believe that they are engaging in righteous struggle to overthrow a system that is trying to oppress everyone. That's why they go to protest. That's why they do the anti-ICE stuff. That's why they do all these crazy things in the streets. They believe their struggle is noble. They believe the police are there to put down their noble uprising. This is the dynamic at play. Do people understand why the left behaves the way they do to the police? It's not just that the left is crazy. It's not that they're mentally ill. It's not that they're entitled narcissists. It's that the left believes that they are in a righteous struggle for good against a powerful evil. And the police are there to protect the powerful evil that they are trying to overthrow. They basically believe they're like Luke Skywalker in Star Wars, guys. I'm not actually exaggerating. People behave based on their perception of the world. They believe that they are the rebels in Star Wars that are trying to overthrow Darth Vader. Do they think because the people were all in one place talking, potentially planning the capitalist police needed to divide the crowd with racism? Well, no, because they believe the police are the racist institution. So no, I understand where you're going with that though, and I understand why you asked that, but like good idea, but I don't necessarily agree with the ultimate interpretation of it. Okay.
Private security, armed business people, etc. But to deal with the centralized grouping of the working class,
LARPing.
To reproduce and reify its racist divisions that are positioned often in close proximity with the ruling class. So everyone still kind of lives in cities, even though, of course, you have walled subdivision and the like. You have to deal with the crowd who have been organized by capitalism. So police are there to fix this for several reasons. So why were police the decided upon better choice? One, the military logistically were expensive and difficult to maintain open occupation everywhere and all the time. It looks bad. They're better equipped at fighting, say, traditional armies and peasant wars that are in one location away from the central ability to shut down production. But armies are quite hard to respond to simultaneous social explosions in urban environments. And two, the look of open occupation usually brings about resistance. Similarly, the look of private mercenaries is an easier target of class anger than a force that is ostensibly considered a public force and that is publicly funded. An industrialist, L.C. Smith, in the early 20th century, who was arguing for the creation of the Pennsylvania State Police, described this when he said, "It's a benefit that regular people," he called them the enemy in this quote though, "see the police arrest, shoot, and kill strikers as a legalized officer of the law, as opposed to on behalf of the industry bosses. That serves their purposes very importantly." And three, it was cheaper The cost of the repression of workers was paid for by tax money as opposed to directly by capitalists. But as we see with police foundations like those who are helping fund Atlanta's Cop City, the bosses are also very happy to shell out large amounts of money to fund their favorite tool, as long as it's still rooted in the appearance and in the funding of it being a public force. And fourth, last point, is that it attempts to draw its composition. The police tries to draw its composition from the population it polices. So different than a garrison soldier. Like in Chicago, the National Guard they're bringing here, of course, is from Texas, not from Illinois. Policing, so-called community policing, is as old as the institution itself. It was, of course, modeled on the British colonization of Ireland and the Royal Irish Constabulary that attempted to hire Irish to police their own. And we see this now with a profoundly contradictory situation in the US, where one in which the racist institution, perhaps the most racist institution in the country, is quite diverse. Of the top 10 largest departments in the country, only 2 were majority white. Of the top 50 departments, 26 have Black police chiefs. So calls to diversify the force as an answer to its violence are absurd, as since the 1970s, the nation forces have become highly diverse, oftentimes matching the—
Pop quiz for the chat. Brian Bean just mentioned that there are Black police chiefs in major cities. Does Brian Bean consider Black police chiefs to be Black or white? Let me rephrase that. Does Brian Bean consider police chiefs with Black skin to be Black or white? Does Brian Bean consider police chiefs who have Black skin, does he consider them to be Black or white? You guys are so smart. He considers them to be white. They're white. Police chiefs that have Black skin are considered to be white because they are engaging in one of the ultimate systems of whiteness. The police are one of the ultimate systems of whiteness. The police are a white supremacist, racist institution created in slavery, designed to uphold the rights of the private bourgeois property or capitalist, the private property owner. He considers police with Black skin to be white. Exactly. Look how smart my chat is. This is because I yelled at everyone yesterday. For half an hour. I lost my voice. We're even answering in Spanish now for reasons past my understanding. And because I yelled at everyone for half an hour yesterday, now everyone knows the— See, I just want people to understand there's a method to my madness. If I am yelling about something, I expect you to learn that thing. And when I look at all the correct answers in the chat, I just had to yell for half an hour and insult people and ban people from the channel and I had to call everyone a retard for half an hour. And all of a sudden today, we have the correct answer dominating the chat. You cannot deny there is a method to my madness. I will bully you all into submission until you understand that whiteness is not about skin color. Whiteness is about capitalism.
the population it serves, but at the same time, they become more militarized and deadly. So because of these reasons, the police have become the preferred institution of capitalist states all across the world to secure order and repress resistance. With some local variation, some form of the cops everywhere in the world play this role. As the journalist Vincent Bevins writes, in nearly every country in the world, you can find a cop to beat you up. So before I get into the ramifications for talking about its functions, I want to highlight one key component of this. So when we talk of the police as a preferred institution, we don't just mean that there's a state that exists separate with an appendage body that is the police. The police are at the core of the state. This is in some ways enshrined by the etymology of the term. The word policing first emerged as a cognate for policy, which was used to describe the tasks of civil administration required in the earliest organization of capitalist states. Early police theorist Jean-Charles Lemaire, who directed the Paris force, called it the science of governing men. So policing was the science of governing men. The first policing activities was the maintenance of roads, lighting of lamps, regulating of price and the market for bread, calibration of weights and measures, keeping max, etc., maintaining the market order for capitalism. But more and more of these activities became subsidiary to the central need for violence, to institute, carry out, reproduce, and force this order down the throats of working people. Hence, the policy of civic administration became a policy of violence. So what I mean by that is that the very manner that states organize, the legal order of the everyday working of capitalism, requires the threat of force. While ideally for them, this threat of force is obscured, in the end, the force of laws, the force behind laws, has the threat of violence behind it. All everyday activity, pay your taxes, don't sleep there, don't sell this on the sidewalk, you can't go here, you can't go on strike, you can't block the street, has behind it the or else of the policeman's club and pistol. The state's ability to make things happen as they want it to depends on them in the end carrying the monopoly of force to ensure compliance. This is especially the case when it's challenged, which I'll talk about later. So states at their core are special bodies of armed men, and every capitalist state is a police state.
Okay, we got to get that clip. That was a great clip, actually. Yep, what he's saying here is that capitalism requires the threat of force to function. What? Very good. Not sure exactly what I need to
carry out, reproduce, market policing activities. The Paris Force called it the science of governing men. So policing was the science of governing men. The first policing activities was the maintenance of roads, lighting of lamps, regulating of price in the market for bread, calibration of weights and measures, keeping max, etc., maintaining the market order for capitalism. But more and more of these activities became subsidiary to the central need for violence, to institute, carry out, reproduce, and force this order down the throats of working people. Hence, the policy of civic administration became a policy of violence. So what I mean by that is that the very manner that states organize, the legal order of the everyday working of capitalism, requires the threat of force. While ideally for them, this threat of force is obscured, in the end, the force of laws, the force behind laws, has the threat of violence behind it. All everyday activity, pay your taxes, don't sleep there, don't sell this on the sidewalk, you can't go here, you can't go on strike, you can't block the street, has behind it the or else of the policeman's club and pistol. The state's ability to make things happen as they want it to depends on them in the end carrying the monopoly of force to ensure compliance. This is especially the case when it's challenged, which I'll talk about later. So states at their core are special bodies of armed men, and every capitalist state is a police state. So,
boom. Great clip.
Having hopefully established a little bit of a foundation.
Hang on. Stop recording. Make sure I get this. Awesome.
Foundation as to what the function of the police is and its role in capitalism, I want to transition now into, I think, some big questions that hopefully can flow into our discussion that are hopefully based on the kind of description I just gave. And that's one, what the function of the police means for the question of reform. Two, why their function means we have to get rid of them. And three, what we have to do in order to get rid of them. So one, reformism.
Okay. I already know I'm going to need to clip this. So we're just going to do it. We're just going to clip it. I don't even remember what he's going to say. Oh.
Two, why their function means we have to get rid of them. And three, what we have to do in order to get rid of them. So one, reformism. So one of the strengths of the abolition tradition is how it has shown that reforming the police overall is impossible, and that certain reforms of the police can actually be counterproductive and expand or entrench the police's ability to do violence. I think body cameras is the most obvious answer. It was a reform that was pushed even in 2014 at the first round of the Black Lives Matter movement. And then very quickly, abolitionists pointed out, well, that just means surveillance of everyone, how these things are handled, all that. So I want to talk about why, though, these reforms function in relation to what they do. If we understand that at its core, what police do, what is essentially about the police, their usefulness for the capitalist class is their monopoly of the threat of discretionary violence. And so if we understand that this essential quality of the police is something that enables the very operation of the capitalist class, then we run into the dead end of reform. We can't reform away the thing that's most important for the police, for the capitalist class. So first, people like Miriam Cobb and others have shown that many of the reforms, kinds of training, body cameras, diversity, even civilian review boards, actually do very little to reduce police power and violence, and sometimes expand it, and can be seen to reinforce an illusion of a neutral or democratic or less violent police force. With that, she and others with groups like Critical Resistance and Interrupting Criminalization argue for fighting around reforms that can actually limit the number of police, the resources they have, and the unaccountable nature of their violence. At the same time, based on this understanding of the function that police play in capitalism, it should cast light that even the pursuance of immediate reforms, as essential as they are to build a movement and to concretely reduce the harm that people face right now, does not mean that police as an institution is reformable. In order for the capitalist state to retain this force of threat, of use, of violence, that component is actually the most essential or useful part of what the police are. So any reforms that actually seek to remove substantially that component come up against challenging the capitalist state's ability to do what it does. At that point, we're not just struggling against the cops, but against the state and the class system that it manages. The vampire capitalist's entire existence is dependent upon them playing the sociopathic game of capitalism, exploitation, and oppression. And one of its main tools used to play that game is the police. So to try to render inoperable, to remove the key quality of its ability to use discretionary violence, is to stop the capitalists from playing the game that for them is existential. They don't play the game, they don't have all their ill-gotten power. They will not allow the central pillar of class rule to be reformed away. And the response will be what it has been throughout history, which is denial of democracy, violent reaction, and bloody repression. So
Okay. Okay. Hang on. I'm getting that clip. So essentially what he just said is the most important task that the police have is to use violence to suppress the working class. And without violence, the police are not going to be effective tools for the capitalists to use. So the question is, can the police be fixed? Can the police be reformed? And Brian Bean's position is, well, if you're talking about reform, like the only reform that really matters is taking away their ability to do violence. And if you take away their ability to do violence, they are no longer going to be useful to the capitalist class. And so, no, we can't reform the police because it's impossible. It's just not going to it's not going to work because they are never going to give up their ability to do violence on the working class because that is their primary function on the role of the capitalist. And so that's why they want to abolish the police. This is why defunding the police isn't enough, by the way. Like pushing down the police budget and putting more money into mental health. The socialists never talk about that. They are abolitionists. This is really important. The socialists are abolitionists. Abolition means to get rid of. They don't want to reform. They don't want to take some budget and put it into mental health. They don't want to reimagine the police. They want to abolish the police. And that is the only answer they will accept because they cannot get their communist revolution without the total abolition of the force. And again, remember, we're not just talking about the police. We're talking about ICE. We're talking about DHS. We're talking about the military. All of these fall under the same. Okay, because all of those institutions are protecting the capitalist state. And without the use of violence, they can't do that. And so that's the point that he's making. Does everyone understand? One of the reasons we like Brian Bean is he is actually pretty clear in what he says. He speaks in very simple language. He doesn't speak in flowery language. And so generally speaking, a lot of his stuff is actually very easy to understand for people. But I want to make sure people are following because it's a lot. It's a lot. And he's going to get into a discussion here in a little bit. So you're going to hear from more people. But we're getting a ton of great clips right now. Cool. All right. I'm just going to start clipping this because I'm sure he's going to say something that I'm going to appreciate. So I'm just going to clip and we're going to continue.
Violent reaction and bloody repression. So 2, they're in the way. Related to this, we see why the role they play means that we have to get rid of them. Along the many paths of trying to change the world, we're going to run up against the police line. They're an obstacle that must be abolished. In any struggle you are engaged with, we reach a certain limit. We're trying to get to a boss to issue our demand for a wage increase. We're trying to give a petition to a politician in support of climate action. We're marching in the streets, making our voices known against racism or genocide. We're trying to occupy our workplaces, etc. At some point, when our activity is no longer permissible in the eyes of the state, we face the police. They tell us we can't go in. We must leave the street, give orders to disperse. They block us with brawn and shields and weapons. They arrest our activists and sometimes murder our martyrs. They're the primary representatives of the state, the most visible symbol of the limits of our democracy and the human form avatars. This workplace, this university, this city is not ours yet. That fact is one of the main reasons why there's such an explosive, potent detonator that I described at the beginning of the talk. So if we're serious about getting rid of the system of capitalism, reclaiming the near infinite wealth that the tiny minority of the ultra-rich have stolen from us for generations, we cannot go around and dodge this fact. A subpoint to this is also why we need to understand that cops are neither workers nor is there police under socialism. Sub-arguments that we can bring up in conversation that I'm not going to go into now. Still debate in the socialist movement. And that brings us to 3, revolution. So the project of police abolition is a revolutionary task that comes into contest with the capitalist state. Building community, constructing alternatives to the police, projects of mutual aid to ameliorate the immediate effects of capitalist crisis can be used to build a movement. They're important in that regard. But similar to the limitations of reform, as soon as these projects pose a serious challenge to the state's goal to secure a positive climate for business and profit, the cops come in. It'd be foolish to underestimate the fury of a capitalist class whose entire existence is based on slavery, genocide, and the most antisocial, selfish, greedy, and violent acts the world has ever known, that they're just going to stand aside. If the project of mutual aid moves beyond the redistribution of, say, donated diapers and moves to the taking over the diaper factories, then challenges like this are going to arise. And that's only the beginning of it. It means that we cannot go around the state. Resolving this requires revolutionary transformation or rupture at the level of the state. The breaking of state power and its replacement by democratic popular rule is necessary for the breaking of police power. They are indeed self-same. So I'm going to move to...
Okay. Pop quiz. What was that clip about? What was that clip about? What did Brian Bean just call for? We're going to listen to that again, obviously. What was that all about? Rewind.
And one of its main tools...
Okay. What was that all about? Genuine question. I'm sorry if this is dumb. I'm still learning. That's okay. How would they handle people that hurt others? What would be considered assault? So they believe that crimes like that would substantially diminish, like to the point of like almost not even happening at all, because they believe that once people have all the resources they need, they wouldn't need to hurt others. So they believe that they don't say that there would be zero crime, but they think that like the vast majority of crime would be substantially reduced so that this wouldn't even really be something they would have to deal with on a normal basis. If capitalism and the police were abolished, crime would not exist. People would take care of each other through mutual aid. Yep, that's true. Yeah, so that whole clip was him talking about overthrowing the government. Everyone get that? That whole clip was about him talking about overthrowing the government. The violent overthrow of the capitalist government. It's almost as if they're calling for workers to strike to take over industry. It's almost as if he was calling for revolution against the capitalist government. We're going to listen to it again, make sure everyone can hear this.
Used to play that game is the police. So to try to render inoperable, to remove the key quality of its ability to use discretionary violence, is to stop the capitalists from playing the game that for them is existential. They don't play the game. They don't have all their ill-gotten power. They will not allow the central pillar of class rule to be reformed away. And the response will be what it has been throughout history, which is denial of democracy, violent reaction, and bloody repression.
When the left says democracy, they don't mean the system we have now. They mean socialism. They do not believe the current system we have is democratic. They believe that the system that they want is true democracy.
So 2, they're in the way. Related to this, we see why the role they play means that we have to get rid of them. Along the many paths of trying to change the world, we're going to run up against the police line. They're an obstacle that must be abolished. In any struggle you are engaged with, we reach a certain limit. We're trying to get to a boss to issue our demand for.
Wolf. Wolf in with the $100 won't get that loot. Yeah, I appreciate it, bro. I'm gonna buy some old commie propaganda just for you with that money, Wolf. Thank you so much for the super chat. I really do appreciate it, guys. Please make sure you mount the like button. W's in the chat for Wolf, and if anyone else wants to give me $100 to go buy commie propaganda with on my trip this weekend, then you guys can do it too, and we'll do W's in the chat for you as well. I really appreciate it, bro. Very generous. Thank you.
Wage increase. We're trying to give a petition to a politician in support of climate action. We're marching in the streets, making our voices known against racism or genocide. We're trying to occupy our workplaces, etc. At some point, when our activity is no longer permissible in the eyes of the state, we face the police. They tell us we can't go in. We must leave the street, give orders to disperse. They block us with brawn and shields and weapons. They arrest our activists and sometimes murder our martyrs. They're the primary representatives of the state, the most visible symbol of the limits of our democracy, and the human form avatars. This workplace, this university, this city is not ours yet. That fact is one of the main reasons why there's such an explosive, potent detonator that I described at the beginning of the talk. So if we're serious about getting rid of the system of capitalism, reclaiming the near infinite wealth that the tiny minority of the ultra-rich have stolen from us for generations, we cannot go around and dodge this fact. A subpoint to this is also why we need to understand that cops are neither workers nor is there police under socialism. Sub-arguments that we can bring up in conversation that I'm not going to go into now. Still debate in the socialist movement. And that brings us to 3, revolution. So the project of police.
He's literally advocating for it right now. This is why everyone needs to shut the fuck up and listen. This is why everyone who's pontificating in the chat about this will never work for reason X, Y, B, and Z. Everyone needs to shut the fuck up and listen, because he is literally calling for the violent overthrow of the state right now. This is what he's saying. That's why we're listening to this. But when communists call for the violent overthrow of the government, they don't say, hey guys, do you want to violently overthrow the government? Okay, sometimes they actually get very close to saying that. They get close, but most of the time when the communists are calling to overthrow the state, it sounds like this. You need to listen to what this sounds like. That's why we're watching this. What does Amalek have to say? If there was no laws and police protecting them right now, I wouldn't even be able to say in the chat what I would do. Well, I'm going to leave that alone. Question, how would they defend the KGB or the Stasi? Not real. So, like, the police do not exist under socialism. The police, and by the way, these are not Stalinists, guys. Like, I tried to explain this yesterday. People don't seem to understand it because it's like the favorite conservative talking point. These people are not Stalinists. These people do not, they don't support the Stasi either. They don't support the KGB either. They're not Stalinists, they're Leninists. All right, listen. He's about to call for the overthrow of the government.
Police abolition is a revolutionary task that comes into contest with the capitalist state.
Police abolition is a revolutionary task that comes into conflict with the capitalist state. When he says the capitalist state, he means the United States government. Bro, Robert, you're one of the people I need to shut the fuck up and listen. I don't want any more pontificating. I don't care about your opinion. You're sitting in a classroom right now. Shut the fuck up and listen. Thank you, Tim. I do appreciate the super chat. Calling for the overthrow of the government, and I still can't get conservatives to shut up and listen to what's being said. Listen.
Is there police under socialism? Sub-arguments that we can bring up in conversation that I'm not going to go into now. Still debate in the socialist movement. And that brings us to 3, revolution. So the project of police abolition is a revolutionary task that comes into contest with the capitalist state. Building community, constructing alternatives to the police, projects of mutual aid to ameliorate the immediate effects of capitalist crisis, can be used to build a movement. They're important in that regard. But similar to the limitations of reform, as soon as these projects pose a serious challenge to the state's goal to secure a positive climate for business and profit, the cops come in. It'd be foolish to underestimate the fury of a capitalist class whose entire existence is based on slavery, genocide, and the most antisocial, selfish, greedy, and violent acts the world has ever known, that they're just going to stand aside. If the project of mutual aid moves beyond the redistribution of, say, donated diapers and moves to the taking over the diaper factories, then challenge like
Amalek says, are any of these idiots actually Maoists still? No, they did not. Well, okay, so the Party for Socialism and Liberation is like the tiniest bit Maoist. But they tend to be more like Stalinists, so it's like the Party for Socialism and Liberation is usually like the exception to the rule. But like for the most part, no. They denounce Stalin, they denounce Mao, they do whole presentations about how they're not Maoists. Like that's not like a real thing.
this are going to arise, and that's only the beginning of it. It means that we cannot go around the state. Resolving this requires revolutionary transformation or rupture.
We can't go around the state being the US government. We can't go around the state. We have to go through the state.
Then challenges like this are going to arise, and that's only the beginning of it. It means that we cannot go around the state. Resolving this requires revolutionary transformation.
Resolving this requires revolutionary transformation. What do you think he means when he says revolutionary transformation? He's not going, guys, we need to get some guns and some bombs and some Molotov cocktails and go firebomb the White House. He's not saying that. He's saying what we want requires revolutionary transformation. What do you think the revolution's over? What do you think they're transforming? When he says revolutionary transformation, he means overthrowing the system of capitalism, the United States government, the Constitution.
Or rupture at the level of the state. The breaking of state power.
Rupture at the level of the state. I don't know why you're asking this. Are you making some weird Zionist point in my chat? Like, thanks for the money. What does this even have to do with anything? No one has said the word genocide. Are you doing some weird fucking pro-Israel bullshit right now? How does the left define genocide? I don't know, killing off an entire people, just like what Israel's doing in Palestine. That's how they define genocide.
To the taking over the diaper factories, then challenges like this are going to arise, and that's only the beginning of it. It means that we cannot go around the state. Resolving this requires revolutionary transformation or rupture at the level of the state. The breaking of state power and its replacement by democratic popular rule is necessary for the breaking of police power.
Well, okay, what you guys need to understand is, listen, I understand that Chandler's fun to like mess with, but Chandler is not a high-profile activist on the left. Chandler is not an influential activist on the left. Chandler doesn't do the activism circuit. Chandler isn't writing books. Chandler isn't speaking at their events. Chandler isn't running classes all over the country. Chandler is not doing organizing apart from him and his friends causing problems at the ICE facility. And again, I understand like a lot of people know who Chandler is now just because of all of the videos and streaming and all of that stuff. But Chandler is really not someone that we should be looking to as an example of like the activist left, because he's not really involved. He's really not. He's like Chandler's kind of like a result of the activist left. Like him and his friends are like downstream from like the more high, like Brian Bean is a high level activist. Brian Bean speaks at events all over the country. Brian Bean is very well known on the left. There are so many videos of this guy talking. It's unbelievable. He does so many different events. He's written books, stuff like that. He has toured all over the country. Brian Bean is someone who sets the talking points for the left. Chandler is not someone who sets the talking points for the left. Chandler's just a guy that's like fun to mess with. And he's a smart guy, and I'm not trying to shit talk him, but just because a lot of people suddenly know who Chandler is doesn't mean he's actually part of this whole ecosystem.
They're indeed self-same. So I'm going to move to close to underscore kind of the urgency of the task and pointing to right now. I might leave a little time for discussion and maybe give me more time to wrap up. But I want to close by underscoring the urgency of our task today. So no one needs me to tell you that the world is in crisis. The long depression that inaugurated in 2008 with the burst of the housing bubble has not been resolved, and the ruling class's attempt at retaining profitability is sending shockwaves. The ruling class's attempt at ruling in some ways is actually questionable. Economic stagnation, austerity, climate catastrophe, all that has been reverberating, giving more to more crises, refugee crises, increased imperial conflict and competition. The failure of centrist and social democratic parties have given rise to a far right globally. And here in this country, we're feeling that quite sharply under Trump. In my book, I argue that the primary ruling class solution to all of these crises is increased intensification of the police state. More police, more militarization, more surveillance, and greater concentration and consolidation of different agencies. They call it interoperability. Cop budgets continue to be increased. Over 80 cop city type training centers are being built all around the country. And Trump's presidency is driving this further with the massive budget increase to ICE, they are cops too, and the terrifying escalation of ICE raids around the country by mass agents that comrades were talking about previously. His funding increased spending on ICE detention centers by 256%, and it tripled federal grants for local and state police under the pretense of immigration quote unquote enforcement, and ballooning the ranks of ICE with thousands of individuals who, while many just perhaps want a job, are also attracted by some pretty grotesque, openly white supremacist messaging about preserving the homeland. Terrifying. The police state is intensifying. So with that, I think the task of building a broad front that is able to resist this and rebuild a fighting left is quite dire. And in that, the politics of abolition and socialism need to be central. But in the smoke, the waving flags of Mexico and Palestine that we saw in the streets of LA to oppose La Migra bears hope, albeit tentative and inchoate. But a movement we need to solidly and soberly take hold of as we aim to fight for a better world without cops and without capitalism. All the liberals are talking about the fear of the police state, but yet they're not talking enough about the police. Our role is to fuse those together in the construction of a fighting new movement that is capable and fit for its task.
Recording stopped.
Okay, now they're going to get into their discussion.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Brian. That was incredible. Cannot wait to hear what everyone has to say. With that, we will open our discussion section. Again, everyone has about 2 minutes to make your comment before I tell you to wrap up, and then you have about a minute before I cut you off. If you want to have your comment heard, DM me, and you can just cite Stack, and I will get you in queue. Stack Plus, if you are from an oppressed identity and would like to have your comment prioritized, and Stack Question for a question mark. All right, and with that, we've got Ben on Stack first, followed by Riley. Go ahead.
Yeah, great talk, Brian. As Brian pointed out, police could not be more of a core pillar to capitalist oppression. Brian just gave a great talk. It was 30 minutes long on how it's absolutely indispensable for capitalist operation and their means of oppression. Nothing is instrumental. Nothing is more materially damaging to working class people. But as Brian also pointed out, almost every social metric does not point to ACAB. The statistical analysis says that the working class has a massive amount of support for cops. There isn't a better example as to why in our organizing and building our groups, we have to be in a staunch, sharp, immaculate position against a working class position. While also being indispensably necessary to have any sort of real success in our coalitions, unions, projects, and collectives, we have to fight against it without any kind of grace, without any kind of flexibility. All of our organizing spaces should be staunchly against the police. Should be abolition spaces. It doesn't mean that we leave every coalition. It doesn't mean that we leave every coalition that expresses a softness towards police, but it does mean that we fight like hell to get them out, to defeat their position in order to win real victories. We absolutely cannot tolerate anything less than the abolition of police in the spaces that we build, regardless of how many or how popular that position is. Years and years ago, we were involved in the coalition to close the concentration camp, which was, I know that Justin was involved with, was around Trump's first term. And in that coalition, we worked with the PSL. It was the last time we ever saw the PSL in an organizing meeting. There was us, PSL, DSA, some anarchist groups, and this group called Lights for Liberty, which was kind of like a liberal NGO that the Democratic Party kind of sprouted overnight. We ended up, that coalition ended up kind of dissolving because the Lights for Liberty group came in and they said, we've been so blessed that the Aurora PD has been so generous to lend us some of their undercover police officers to come into an immigrant.
Okay, so this guy's a communist, right? And so this guy's saying, listen, we were involved in this organizing thing that had the PSL, and by the way, they don't like the PSL. The PSL is the Party for Socialism and Liberation. They do not like them at all. But they're like, it was the DSA and the PSL and these other groups and this stupid Democrat group that sprouted up, and the stupid Democrat groups brought the undercover police, and this was deeply offensive to the fucking communists. That's funny. I want to listen to this again. Hang on.
First term. And in that coalition, we worked with the PSL. It was the last time we ever saw the PSL in an organizing meeting. There was us, PSL, DSA, some anarchist groups, and this group called Lights for Liberty, which was kind of like a liberal NGO that the Democratic Party kind of sprouted overnight. We ended up, that coalition ended up kind of dissolving because the Lights for Liberty group came in and they said, we've been so blessed that the Aurora PD has been so generous to lend us some of their undercover police officers to come into an immigrant rights march. The PSL couldn't be happier, could not be happier. They said, this is fine, this is great. We want to work with larger liberal NGOs to have.
Okay, I gotta record this. They're saying the PSL was specifically okay with working with the cops, and this is one of the reasons they don't like the PSL. That's fucking funny. I must have missed. No, I didn't actually miss it. I'm seeing my own reaction on the screen, so I heard it the first time. That's hilarious, though. Hey, thanks, Doug, for the travel funds. I do appreciate it. All right. I always love to clip them shit talking the PSL just so we can use, because I really do believe eventually the Trump administration is going to go after the PSL. I believe that they're good and pissed off because the PSL was tangentially connected to that guy that killed the people outside of the Israeli embassy. And so I think they're going to go after the PSL at some point. Also, that stupid Data Republican account is obsessed with the PSL and spreads misinformation about the PSL. And obviously the Data Republican account is a conservative shill account that no one should be following or taking seriously because they've spread misinformation like multiple times, but like they're obsessed with the PSL. And I really think we're going to see something probably in the next year or so where the Trump administration is going to go after the PSL and they're going to claim they're going after Antifa, but Antifa is not the PSL and the PSL is not Antifa. Antifa hates the PSL. Most communist groups hate the PSL. They don't want to work with them. They don't like them. They consider them to be paid protesters. And when this happens, when the Trump administration eventually goes after them, I want a massive fuck off archive of clips of communist and leftist groups completely denouncing the PSL and saying they're stupid, because I promise you the Trump administration is not going to have that, but we will. So let me clip this real quick.
Police, but it does mean that we fight like hell to get them out, to defeat their position in order to win real victories. We absolutely cannot tolerate anything less than the abolition of police in the spaces that we build, regardless of how many or how popular that position is. Years and years ago, we were involved in the coalition to close the concentration camp, which was, I know that Justin was involved with, was around Trump's first term. And in that coalition, we worked with the PSL. It was the last time we ever saw the PSL in an organizing meeting. There was us, PSL, DSA, some anarchist groups, and this group called Lights for Liberty, which was kind of like a liberal NGO that the Democratic Party kind of sprouted overnight. We ended up, that coalition ended up kind of dissolving because the Lights for Liberty group came in and they said, we've been so blessed that the Aurora PD has been so generous to lend us some of their undercover police officers to come into an immigrant rights march. The PSL couldn't be happier, could not be happier. They said, this is fine, this is great. We want to work with larger liberal NGOs to have access to more people. We want to have a broader audience. Needless to say, after my head kind of exploded and as steam was coming out of my ears, I said, what the hell do you even mean a good working relationship with the cops? What does this even mean?
Wrap up.
we held that position staunchly. The PSL ended up rage quitting out of this organizing meeting the last time we ever saw them in a meeting, citing reasons of being difficult, of being immature, of being emotionally stubborn, and having nothing to do with an abolitionist stance towards the police. We ended up actually executing that action, which was a large success. We burned American flags. Somebody actually got a felony. It was a great action, and all of that was thanks to organizing that continued past the necessity for abolition of the police in all of our organizing spaces. Thank you.
Got it. Thank
you, comrade. I've
Thank you,
got
comrade.
Riley next, and then Katie. Go ahead, Riley.
I'm trying not to fangirl out right now over Brian Bean. I'm such a massive fan of this book. I've been talking about it with my basically chatting about it with my parents, trying to sharpen up my understanding. And a question that always comes up, as I'm sure you've heard a lot, is okay, if we get rid of the police, the good guys with a gun, what about the bad guys with a gun? What about people who speed? What about people who steal from grocery stores?
Okay, I need to. I think I already have this clipped, but I'm going to clip it again. Just because.
Basically chatting about it with my parents, trying to sharpen up my understanding. And a question that always comes up, as I'm sure you've heard a lot, is okay, if we get rid of the police, the good guys with a gun, what about the bad guys with a gun? What about people who speed? What about people who steal from grocery stores or steal from other people? You know, like what are some things I could bring to them, for example, as a way that we could, as a society, fix those issues? I know that obviously, with things like theft and things like that, you know, anything that's like loss of property, that's generally just going to be a thing as long as capitalism is around. I understand that part. Kind of similar with how there are, like, you know, gangs that, you know, gang wars do happen, and that is also a symptom of capitalism. But what do we say to these people when they're looking for an alternative to the police? I guess, yeah, like what are our alternatives that we have out there?
Okay, so I thought he was going to make more of a general statement, but that was still actually a pretty good clip. Hang on, let me just save this clip real quick. I think they do answer him later in the presentation, if I'm remembering correctly. But first, yo, Darla. W's in the chat for Darla. Thank you, Darla. Retired military and LEO. I think you just taught me what happened with grown kids. Thank you. Well, thank you, Darla, for the $100 super chat. I really do appreciate it. I'm really glad I was able to teach you something and show you what these people actually think. And I'm going to put your money to good use this weekend. I'm going to go buy some old school commie propaganda with it so we can archive it and research it and all that stuff. Really do appreciate the super chat. That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, comrade. I've got Katie next, and then Bill. Go ahead, Katie.
Thanks so much, comrade.
Hang on, we got Tayton in with the $10 super chat. Thank you, Tayton. I heard a stream ended the other day. Sounds like some Karlyn ass whoopings were handed out. Love you all. Yup, I had to yell at people. It was a yelling at, you know, it was post-Thanksgiving. Karlyn has to give everyone a sternly worded lecture and then cry on the internet and then have a therapy session with Pearl. Apparently, Pearl just came in to do a therapy session. That was still fun. I'm still like, that's it. Just as an aside from this, it is so fucking funny that I cried on the internet the other day and then Pearl comes in to be my therapist just out of nowhere. Like, I just love it. It was the most random thing ever, and it was actually very sweet. She was very, very, very sweet. Okay, she was very sweet, and it was actually very nice, and it endeared me to her. Yeah, I know some people like me. Some people like me. All right. Hey, thanks, Doug, for the 5 gifted channel memberships. I really do appreciate it. Congratulations to everyone who just got a channel membership from Doug. That's awesome. No, I was definitely not expecting Pearl to show up either. That was great. That was awesome.
That's great presentation and a great discussion so far. Yeah, echoing Riley, I really have enjoyed reading their end as our beginning. I just wanted to share a quick anecdote just because I work downtown with the city from time to time, which means we have to work with the police from time to time. And I've been put in some weird situations lately with it.
Wait,
I'll save you that.
Did you guys hang on? Side note. Can we just appreciate that the word retarded is finally being spoken more? Did everyone see the video of Tim Walz crying about Trump calling him a retard and saying that Tim Walz claims he now has people driving by his house just shouting the word retard? And I'm like, please let that be true, actually. Like, please let that be true. Like, you gotta be some pussy, sorry excuse for a man to cry about being called a retard. Honestly, he's like, I cannot believe he used the R word. It is unacceptable to use the R word. Shut up, man. Like, whatever.
But a little personal anecdote is I was on a meeting
racist.
with one of the police chiefs here on the SPD, and basically
Seattle.
here in Seattle they are starting to roll out a bunch of CCTVs and what they're calling RTCC, or real-time crime something, and it's basically like these cameras that are around to help police response. But the officer basically, we were on a Zoom call and the officer basically like gave us a little intel, and he's like, oh yeah, the camera's already up. There's a camera or 2 up in our neighborhood, and he like basically pulled them up and was like zooming in on people's license plates, zooming like random people just driving around on the street, zooming in on like their faces in their cars, and everyone's like, wow, that's pretty cool. And I'm just like, this is horrifying. And the police chief followed up by, don't tell this to anybody, don't say anything to anyone, we're going to roll out this info slowly. So they're the police basically
Great,
spied on
Reagan.
people,
Awesome.
told us not to tell anybody, and then said they were going to do a press conference to announce the release of this, but it's already here. And they basically told me and my co-workers to not say anything. So yeah, the cops are not on your sides. The cops spy on us, and it's just leads me to wonder how many other things they're doing behind the scenes that like we don't even know what's happening. And if they can just zoom in on us while we're driving in our cars and not tell us, like who knows what the hell else. So yeah, ACAB forever. Thanks, comrades.
Thank you so much, Katie. I'm actually going to jump Justice up first, and then Bill. Go ahead, Justice.
Thank you, comrade. Also
Justice is
fangirling. Thank you,
black.
Brian. I've been a fan of yours since you did that.
I just want to note, Justice just got to cut in line in front of other people to ask their question because Justice is black. And they are using the progressive stack method of ordering the people for the discussion section, where if you are an oppressed identity, you get to go to the head of the line. That's why the trans person was up front. And now they've got a black person that they've allowed to cut in line in front of the white guy, because there's a lot of white guys on this call. So that's why there's a new person in line.
That talk with Curry in like 2018. For the Clubs the ISO. But I just want to jump right into it here. I really feel like when we consider the question of police, and you laid it out perfectly why it is that most workers have, a favorable perspective of the police, even though they've seen that the police are antagonistic to their own interests because of this question of crime. And I just want to stress, and more, especially as we consider this, and not just the community organizing we do, but especially like labor organizing or, any kind of connection we have with just an ordinary person who isn't necessarily radicalized, that by kind of encouraging them to take motion, to make demands, to take action, both to meet their own needs in the workplace, but also just making demands more generally of the state. We are forcing them onto a path that will radicalize them against the police and we saw it in 2020. I mean, and actually, I was talking with a coworker about it when we were talking about some of the stuff we were doing around ICE, where they were like, I just remember just getting tear gassed and having, close friends of mine attacked by police in the streets in 2020. And now we're just expected to scan up their groceries and smile and just expect that they're just normal members of society. And that contradiction tears away at people over time, especially when we consider kind of a revolutionary situation. And this is what I want to say, which I'm surprised that I haven't said this at any point in the conference until now, even though we don't necessarily know when the revolutionary situation will strike out. There was a call made by Sean Fain and the UAW during their stand-up strike, demanding, a general strike as an approach to try and tackle all these big problems.
Yo! Gotta get that clip. When they're talking about the revolutionary situation, they're talking about the spark that will start the workers' revolution, like in like the Russian Revolution, and they're talking about using the general strike in 2028 as the way to spark that.
Contradiction tears away at people over time, especially when we consider kind of a revolutionary situation. And this is what I want to say, which I'm surprised that I haven't said this at any point in the conference until now, even though we don't necessarily know when the revolutionary situation will strike out. There was a call made by Sean Fain and the UAW during their stand-up strike, demanding, a general strike as an approach to try and tackle all these big problems in 2028. And I think if we can build more and more people to recognize that they are going to have to take an active part of that struggle to make that happen. And then that, even though that is something that we have not tried before, at least in our lifetimes, we can see the potential for that to change things. We can also anticipate the police response. And so more and more, I just feel like encouraging people to recognize their position in antagonism to the police as interconnected to their goal and struggle just for basic survival, just to continue their life, to try and achieve whatever they consider to be the American dream for them and their family, but more importantly, to recognize that their struggles, their survival, their communities are going to come up straight up against the police. Thank you.
Okay. Got my clip.
Thank you, Justice.
Hang on. Tayton, since Justice gets to cut in, does that mean there are reverse hierarchies in regards to oppressed persons' voices first? How do we gauge this? Yeah, so they do progressive stack at this conference. So basically, how you get to okay. So how this works is this was a completely virtual conference. And so they were doing the whole thing on Zoom. If you wanted to get what they call on stack, you just type stack into the chat. But if you are a person of an oppressed identity, you can type stack plus into the chat, and it's like the honor system. So if you type stack plus into the chat, you basically get moved to the front of the line. So if you're Black or trans or something like that, you type it, or disabled, you type in stack plus, and then you're allowed to cut everyone else. Good question.
I actually have a question that just came in from Janine, so we'll go to Janine.
Hello. Okay, so let me wrap up my thoughts on my question. Give me a moment. So great presentation, Brian. I really appreciate it, and the contributions by everybody else. My question, and I think somebody mentioned that someone posed a question of what would life look like without the police, right? And the reason I bring it up, and yeah, I'm a revolutionary socialist from below, yada yada, right? But my question is I just anecdotally, I was talking to somebody, I'm the life would be a lot better without the police and this and that, and I hold the same position, just what Brian laid out. But I couldn't give a good concrete answer of what life would look like, without police. And what I mean by that is if and when harm is done to somebody in the community, right? If there is sexual assault or murder, right? I couldn't give a concrete answer of how that situation would be resolved with just us making those choices of how it would be navigated. And like this is just like something that like I want to explore and to try to like understand. And this question isn't directed just at Brian, but like just everybody else here in this conversation. So yeah, I just want to explore that, the hard question, basically. Thank you.
Thank you, Janine. I've got Julia next. Go ahead, Julia.
Hi, comrades. Yeah, a couple comments along the lines of what I mentioned before in terms of how we apply these conversations in our movements and how they're showing themselves in the things I'm involved in. Because so I realized I didn't say before, when we had that hunger strike, the Sanctuary Coalition hunger strike, it was the demand is for the county to pass a sanctuary ordinance or a non-compliance with the ordinance with ICE, and that's an ongoing fight. And then there are some other demands within it. But
I had an extra
the
row.
biggest obstacle to fighting that is that the sheriff, who is African American, just to say, because it's important to kind of dispel the myths of identity, having a black sheriff or police chief making things really any different. But interestingly, so the biggest obstacle is the sheriff, basically. Although the sheriff has changed his policy about what violations will lead to them handing over people's names if ICE requests them. It's still collaboration, right? And it's just that, they don't collaborate. It's a whole semantics thing. But it's important. It's interesting,
Okay.
I've learned a lot
Thank
about
you.
California law, and there's, it's important to engage with some of these pieces. So during the hunger strike, the sheriff was walking by on his way to a meeting with management. Oh my gosh. Okay, and invited to speak to folks at the hunger strike, and agreed to come back and meet with folks in the encampment. And maybe 20 or 30 people, I walked in on this conversation after work, sat and talked with the sheriff about the limits, about why he won't agree to non-collaboration. And it exposed him. It was amazing to have, and a lot of people would argue that we shouldn't have, we should have told him to go fuck himself, and he shouldn't have been in that space. But it was very useful because people come from all sorts of different political positions. It was very useful to engage in that and to expose him. And it
3 minutes, Conrad.
And it advanced the conversations with people around us. So I think we need to avoid being just like, we need to have this line in every space, right? Because then you're not having the nuanced conversations that expose people at the different levels they're at. Thanks.
Thank you, Julia. I've got Kim next. Go ahead, Kim.
Sorry. Yeah, I wanted to take up a couple of the questions that are the same question, which is, what would life be like without police, and how do you talk to people about that? And for me, I think it's really good to start with the conversation, asking people, what is life like?
Hang on, I'm gonna get this. I'm gonna clip this part. I don't remember exactly what she says, but I feel like this seems like it needs to be clipped. Doug with another 5. Is Doug the new Cynthia? Has Doug taken over Cynthia's role? Thank you, Doug, for the 5 gifted channel memberships. That's like 3. Guys, you guys are all slacking behind Doug in terms of the gifted channel memberships. If you guys haven't sent in a $50 or $100 super chat, just know that you're slacking behind Doug, okay? I'm just saying, thank you, Doug. Appreciate that. Congrats to everyone who got a channel membership.
I wanted to take up a couple of the questions that are the same question, which is what would life be like without police, and how do you talk to people about that? And for me, I think it's really good to start with the conversation, asking people, what is life like with the police? What is life like with the police, right? So all of us have had our various and sundry encounters. I've been sexually assaulted 4 occasions. The first occasion I attempt to be engaged with the police, and I was attacked by the police. So needless to say, the following 3 times I did not go to the police. I don't know anybody who's ever been raped who's gone to the police, because we all know what happens, right? We are the people who become attacked. Additionally, calling the police for any sort of crisis that we have in our homes with family members or community members or or neighbor, people who we immediately engage with that involve any kind of fear, bringing the police in almost always increases the level of fear and danger for everybody involved. In terms of, solve murders and things like that, it's very clear they don't actually solve cases. They don't solve murder cases. They don't solve any cases at all. The thing that I really kind of wanted to get to really quickly is, if we say what is it like with them, and what would it be like without them? There's currently this reform language nationally, which is we're going to include social workers into the police forces. And I'm actually writing an article on this right now because it is such a non-truth. It is not possible to include social workers into police forces to do social work. And I think it's the thing that is leading a lot of people down the road who are kind of interested in Mamdani's position on the police, which is to include social workers into the police department. So I look forward to writing that article and maybe sharing that. But we can't reform them, and they actually make our lives more dangerous than less. Is my personal experience.
All right. Great clip. So that was the person that did the Tom Alter fundraiser. That's funny. So now we know the person who was defending the commie professor at Texas State University is also a communist. They've raised $60,000. Man. Why aren't people sending me $60,000? Why is the communist college professor getting $60,000 and I got fired? Why aren't people sending me $60,000 for getting him fired? I feel like listen. This just goes back to like, no one respects me. No one likes what I do. No one fucking listens to me. I achieve a feat that has not been achieved since the McCarthy era. And the communist professor that I got fired from his job and I got his tenure revoked gets $60,000. It's not fair. It's not fair.
Thank you, Kim. I've got Bill next. Go ahead, Bill.
Bill.
That was a great talk, Brian, and I still haven't read your book, and I feel really bad about that. But I have a question for you anyway, which is how does your stuff on the police help you understand? How does it make us understand the revolutionaries, the role of the law in society? When I was surprised to learn that the Black Panthers tried to open a law school, and it was an extension of their fight against the police. And they realized that to take on the police is to take on the law. They better get trained up in the law. And I think they saw it, you called the police a monopoly of force. And I think that was their conclusion about the law itself, right? That essentially it was the power behind the police to uphold private property and the source of repression. And I ask too, because, I think your argument's important. If we're moving in the direction of police states as part of the far right, there's a massive amount of manipulation of the law that goes along with that. You know, we see it in the US, we see it in Hungary, we see it in Israel. It's a force, it's a hammer, right, that is used to keep us down. And I ask this too because I think a lot of the liberal consensus is that the rule of law is somehow going to save us. The rule of law can actually fuck us over pretty badly. So I'm just curious how your book research has like made you think about that, if it has at all.
Thank you, Bill. I've got Riley with a question next. Go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry to hog the queue. Someone had brought up a good point about like being unable to separate social work with the police. I myself work in the peer support field. So I'm a social worker. I would be if I were in a more official position, I would be a mandated reporter. What would be the solution there? Because obviously I have zero desire to have any contact with any police officer. However, like my job is telling me, and the state is telling me I have to report. And I guess like what do I do in that situation?
Thank you, Riley. I've got Kylie next. Go ahead, Conrad.
Kylie, hang on. That's who Reagan wants me to clip. I don't know what Kylie's going to say, but Reagan promises it's going to be good.
What do I do in that situation?
Thank you, Riley. I've got Kylie next. Go ahead, Conrad.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to say first that oh yeah, I'm Kylie, I'm from Firebrand in Denver. That a lot of times in like the anti-police movements, we can tend to kind of say that violence doesn't occur or like violent crime doesn't occur because it's so exaggerated by the far right. And I mean it does occur, but the response to it, the police response to it does not stop crime because they're built to enforce the system that creates it, which is capitalism. And a world without police is a world without capitalism because they can't exist without each other. And as socialists, we need to be abolitionists, but also as abolitionists, we need to be socialists because the only way to get rid of crime is to get rid of capitalism. And obviously, violence would still occur in a socialist or communist society, while to what I believe would be a much lesser extent. It would be a difference in how you address that violence. You don't just send people to prison. You make democratic decisions on an individual basis. And obviously we can't say like how policing or how, I guess, violence would be addressed in a communist society because we're not there. But it wouldn't be like it is now. And we really need to take away capitalism because it is the incentive. It's the incentive for violence and for policing to exist. And really, they don't solve crime; they manufacture it. And you know, while the police commit crimes themselves, policing itself creates more crime by not just the police itself, but by other people. And I think that's something that's important to address as well.
Thank you so much, Kylie.
That was great. That was a great clip, Reagan. That was perfect. That was perfect. So the answer to how do communists deal with crime without the police is crime will still happen, but the police can't exist without capitalism. But capitalism causes all crime. So there may be violence, but it won't be the same type of violence, and they'll deal with it in a different way because capitalism must be abolished and the police can't exist without capitalism. Everyone clear? let's keep going.
Justin next. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Brian. That was a great talk. And then I want to share my experience organizing by using your frame. So in 2020 with the Black Lives Matter rebellion,
Thank you.
especially, at the stage when people were confronting police departments and, taking it to the highest level, the most militant level. Myself and my coworkers, we teach in a community college district, formed a committee through our union actually to advocate for a hiring freeze on all police and to defund the existing police budget and to reallocate those services towards Black, Chicano, and Indigenous student needs. In our district, it's majority students of color, working class students of color. And we were able to sort of build a pretty substantial network of teachers, campus workers, and students.
Who does trust me, bro, more, conservatives or the communists? Well, okay, so here's the thing. At least the communists are consistent in their beliefs. So the communists may say, trust me, bro, but they are incredibly consistent about their beliefs. Conservatives who say, trust me, bro, are all over the fucking place and have no actual real values that they hinge into. Like, communists have real values. You might not agree with those real values, and that's fine. But communists are very, very clear about what their values are. Capitalism is bad. Capitalism is evil. Capitalism is everything that's wrong with the world. Capitalism created all problems. We need to get rid of capitalism in order to fix all problems. They are incredibly consistent about what they say. So they may say, trust me, bro, but they're actually all still saying the same talking points. Conservatives, you don't know what the fuck they're going to believe on any given day. It depends on what's popular. It depends on what's talking points are approved. It depends on what is in the news cycle versus what's not in the news cycle. It depends on who is in the good graces that day and who's not in the good graces that day. It's all over the fucking place. So I would say they both do it, but at least communists do it in a consistent and predictable way. Whereas conservatives, you don't know what the fuck they're going to say because they don't have any real values.
To a point where we had, at the high point, hundreds of us going to school board meetings to demand that the school board begin this process of defunding and to maintain the hiring freeze. And essentially, our school board is a kind of liberal demonstration of the sort of rainbow capitalism, right? In the sense that,
hang on. I got to get this. This is the part Reagan wanted me to clip. Rainbow capitalism. Rainbow capitalism is capitalism that liberals and Democrats, it's basically, so like rainbow capitalism is like pride parades and pride festivals and companies doing pride merchandise. Basically, they're saying they're just trying to exploit the gays for capitalism. It's not like any sort of real activism.
District, it's majority students of color, working class students of color. And we were able to sort of build a pretty substantial network of teachers, campus workers, and students to a point where we had, at the high point, hundreds of us going to school board meetings to demand that the school board begin this process of defunding and to maintain the hiring freeze. And essentially, our school board is a kind of liberal demonstration of the sort of rainbow capitalism, right? In the sense that very presenting of liberal identities and liberal ideologies, but and paid a lot of lip service, when we had mobilizations going on. But we made our demands, and then we started to go to other sort of places within the district where the administration accumulated, and we started to confront them, calling attention to how the police budget in our district, at a time when we're facing budget cuts, consumed millions and millions of dollars, that the police themselves operated independently of the campus administrations and even the district. That there was a revelation that a serial rapist was in the police department and it was being covered up. And in our movement, we got local media coverage. We started to build a campaign in which they basically started to have to respond. They carried out the hiring freeze, et cetera. Well, they carried out the hiring freeze, and that was it. But when the Democrats basically, when there was the reaction to this, and the sort of efforts by the Democrats to demobilize, move to the right, and began refunding the police after the movement subsided, so too did all of the sort of layers of our administration down to our union leadership. They basically turned against us. They went after us. The union leadership basically pushed us out of the union, closed our committee. We had to move this, and the city council at that same time actually increased the police budget by 47%, and campus administrators increased police funding on the basis of saying we need to train them on sort of sensitivity training. So this idea of refunding.
3 minutes.
Okay. Okay. So I'll just finish by saying we had to basically move out of the committee and continue our work there across the district. And now we're having to organize against the top-down state-led efforts to criminalize homelessness and use the police to attack unhoused peoples, including, and this now includes 25%, or up to 25% of the students in our district. So this is the sort of the way this has played out over time.
Cool.
Thank you so much, Justin. I've got Jason next. Go ahead, Conrad.
Jason.
Brian, thank you so much, comrade. Learned so much from you over the years about racism and anti-racism and police and so much more, Palestine. Yeah, I guess we're just starting your book, so but I'm liking how you've emphasized the police as a in Harsha Walia's term, a race-making institution. You know, and especially like highlighting in their earliest role, or you know, in certain contexts, their earliest role was to prevent solidarity across the imposed racial lines. So thank you for that. Wanted to clap back on Ben a bit about working alongside reformists. We have to. It's basically all there is. Even our anarchist comrade who's leading a fight, as I talked about earlier, but Brian wasn't here to hear it. We only get 90 minutes of Brian. We wanted 12 hours, but this weekend. Even our anarchist comrade who's leading this fight for justice for the murdered trans woman here is calling, the main call to action is for a police oversight, independent police oversight, which is not something that we can endorse. I'm glad. I would love to hear you speak more on that, Brian, if you wouldn't mind, or that type of direction, because we're trying to grapple with it. But so anyway, what I'm saying is, yeah, we have to work alongside reformists, but we have to do it in a certain way. Like, we can't endorse that demand, but we can be in solidarity with the people making it. And also to go back to the story that Ben told about the PSL, not only were they willing to work with the cops, but they wanted us to drop.
Hang on. More shitting on the PSL? You guys know I'm a sucker for a clip of them shitting on the Party for Socialism and Liberation. Again, Jason.
Like, we can't endorse that demand, but we can be in solidarity with the people making it, and also to go back to the story that Ben told about the PSL, not only were they willing to work with the cops, but they wanted us to drop the slogan, which was the name of the coalition, Close the Concentration Camps Coalition. And I believe this was the brainchild of Justin and Kim. Already 3 or 2? That's 2. Okay, thank you. They wanted to drop the slogan that was the name of the damn coalition. The other slogan was "Let them all in." I don't even know if they were okay with that, but anyway, we PSL was happy to take a tailist approach and go along with this shit, including the class collaborationist, police collaborationist stuff, but the political stuff too. and we've always tried to take a political lead. And to me, that's close the concentration camps. The slogan itself was goddamn trying to take a political lead in that moment in the immigrant rights movement. And so last thing, wasn't a felony. She got off. Her dad was in that concentration camp. We did court support for her. We see her. Actually, we saw her daughter and at an anti-Trump protest.
Hey, we got a Rumble rant over from I don't know exactly how to say your name. I'm gonna say PA. Karlyn, I sent you a vid on X of anthropological communists talking about guns and fun club. I wish I could ask these people how abolishing capitalism and the police would handle satanic child abuse. Okay, well, communists don't really care about the pedo stuff that conservatives are obsessed with. Honestly, they don't care about it. They don't talk about it. They don't really engage in it. But I do appreciate the Rumble rant. Thank you.
And she's a badass. But she got for burning a flag, and then we put up some, people
3
put up.
minutes.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
It is a good story though. I've got Anaga with a question next. Go ahead, Carmen.
Hi, I think this was brought up a little bit already, but so we know that when it comes time for revolution.
Reagan, is this the thing you wanted me to clip? I already forgot. I feel like this is something Reagan wanted me to clip. That's her? Okay, I thought so. Thank you.
I've got Anaga with a question next. Go ahead, Carmen.
Hi, I think this was brought up a little bit already, but so we know that when it comes time for revolution, the first stage is a worker state, and that the worker state will need a repressive apparatus to keep back the capitalist counter-revolutionaries. And it's something we talk about with respect to abolition movements today, like the problem with prisons and the police is not that they are repressive, but it's about who controls them and who exercises that power. And that power is with the capitalists right now. So my question is, when it comes to a worker state, repressive apparatus.
I just completely fucked up that clip, by the way, so we got to record that one again. That's okay. That was good, though. That's okay. We just got to do it again because I messed up.
Hi, I think this was brought up a little bit already, but so we know that when it comes time for revolution, the first stage is a worker state, and that the worker state will need a repressive apparatus to keep back the capitalist counter-revolutionaries. And it's something we talk about with respect to abolition movements today, like the problem with prisons and the police is not that they are repressive, but it's about who controls them and who exercises that power. And that power is with the capitalists right now. So my question is, when it comes to a worker state repressive apparatus, how that kind of what that looks like and how it kind of avoids just ending up kind of doing the same thing. And if the problems with the police are inherent to its ties to capitalism, or if there's more there. So like, how do we avoid that kind of body becoming like the Red Guards, or becoming like another tool of workers' repression? Is it just that all of the decisions are democratically decided? And then, yeah, I also wanted to comment on, I think a lot of people are asking about alternatives to the police today. And I think that's kind of like asking, how do we end the genocide today? And it's a bigger thing than that. It's rooted in capitalism, and there isn't really an alternative right now. But when we do have control of the state, and it is under our control and our power, how do we create something that is democratic and doesn't fall into the same type of brutality?
Okay, so
Thank you,
I just want to note, someone asked earlier, how do they define? I wasn't recording it. I thought I was recording it, and I wasn't recording it. Gotta watch it again. All right, we're gonna watch her again. That's fine. That's fine. You know what? We watch things over and over again all the time. But I just want to note that she just basically said that capitalism is responsible for genocide. So someone asked earlier what they believe about genocide. She just told you. Capitalism is. I'm a professional streamer on the internet, by the way. I'm a professional streamer. I know how to do this stuff.
And then we put up some, people
3
put
minutes.
up. Okay, all right. Thanks.
It was a good story though. I've got Anaga with a question next. Go ahead, Carl.
Hi, I think this was brought up a little bit already, but so we know that when it comes time for a revolution, the first stage is a worker state, and that the worker state will need a repressive apparatus to keep back the capitalist counter-revolutionaries. And it's something we talk about with respect to abolition movements today, like the problem with prisons and the police is not that they are repressive, but it's about who controls them and who exercises that power. And that power is with the capitalists right now. So my question is, when it comes to a worker state repressive apparatus, how that kind of what that looks like and how it kind of avoids just ending up kind of doing the same thing. And if the problems with the police are inherent to its ties to capitalism, or if there's more there. So like, how do we avoid that kind of body becoming like the Red Guards, or becoming like another tool of workers' repression? Is it just that all of the decisions are democratically decided? And then, yeah, I also wanted to comment on, I think a lot of people are asking about alternatives to the police today, and I think that's kind of like asking how do we end the genocide today, and it's a bigger thing than that. It's rooted in capitalism, and there isn't really an alternative right now. But when we do have control of the state, and it is under our control and our power, how do we create something that is democratic and doesn't fall into the same type of brutality?
All right.
Thank you, Anaga.
Excellent. I recorded it that time, guys. Are you proud of me? I know how to use the internet now. I've only been doing this for 6 years, and I have finally figured out how to use the internet. There we go. Recorded. Andre, thank you for the super chat. It just dawned on me. So that's why for years the city I lived in, per the far left, influenced the mayor. He didn't want the 5 police drones to patrol the city because he is against the police. Exactly. It's surveillance. Surveillance is bad. Thank you for the super chat. I really do appreciate it. Yeah, everyone clap for me figuring out how to use the internet. We made it, guys. We made it. Steve is right after this. Okay. We do love Steve.
I am going to do last call for stack. We're coming up. I know we have a little bit of extra time because we started a little bit late, but I wanted to give Brian a lot of time after if possible. So Steve, go ahead.
Steve, hang on. We got to get Steve's
started a little bit late, but I wanted to give Brian a lot of time
Steve
after
Lee
if
from
possible.
the Seattle Revolutionary Socialists.
So Steve, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, thanks a lot. Great, really great discussion. And I just wanted to point out that Brian's book, both the Denver Firebrand and Seattle Firebrand are doing a study group on that book right now. So we encourage everybody to join our study groups or set one up yourself. It's a fantastic book. The question that Riley first asked about what do we say about the police now and that kind of stuff. I think we have to understand, as Brian said, that abolition of the police comes along with revolution. There will be no abolition of the police without socialist revolution. Therefore, abolition is a process. We have an attitude of abolition, and we carry that out by supporting reforms or whatever that weaken the police, that undermine the police, that cut off funding to the police, etc. So those are the kind of reforms we support, and we don't support the other kind. So we have to realize that every move of money away from the police towards social programs or housing or whatever is a good thing. So our abolitionist attitude helps us to understand the need to push for, even in the short term, defunding, moving money away from the police, weakening the police, etc. And then quickly, there's a contradiction, I think, between diverse affirmative action, etc., and policing, and that is, I think it's a good thing that the police are more diverse than they used to be. And the reason for that is that it highlights that it's the problem is the police and not just white police, the whole institution of the police. And so that diversity is a good thing. However, when it bumps up against the police, we are for the abolition of the police. So in Seattle, during the Black Lives Matter movement, there was a black female police chief who used her position to try to undermine the Black Lives Matter movement by saying that her interests should be respected, because she had to fight hard to get the job of police chief. Her name was Karlyn Borysenko. And the movement was kind of flummoxed by that. We need to say we're for diversity, but we're first of all against the police. Thanks.
There you go. The black police chief in Seattle during BLM wasn't really black. She was white. Hey, thanks, Darla, for upgrading your channel membership to gold. I really do appreciate that. That's awesome. Yeah, it wasn't enough that she was black. It wasn't enough that she was a woman, because she was still the police, and the police are bad and the managers of capitalism. So the black female police chief in Seattle was really white, and they still needed to abolish her job. Excellent.
Thank you, Steve. I've got Mark next. Go ahead, comrade.
Okay. Hey, comrades. I'm Mark, firebrand in Kansas. He, him.
Professor, by the way.
A lot of what I
Professor
was
at
going to
Kansas
say
State.
is going to be just co-signing Steve at this point. But I just want to point out a couple of things, like the emphasis that Brian, great talk, by the way, comrade, put on the police as part of the capitalist state and like a primary expression of the capitalist state, I think is really important. Where I am in Kansas, the cops and the city council are rolling out a CCTV partnership with some private AI tech firm to link the police to Ring cameras and new cameras going up downtown and going up in the university where I work. And they're putting it forward as like, this is to solve problems, not to surveil people. But this is happening in a context where my town has been increasingly putting police pressure on homeless encampments. There was an encampment on the north side of town that got swept recently. There were some woods just across the street from where I live, where some people have been camping for years with no problems, and the city clear cut those trees. At the same time, the faculty union at my university was recently threatened with the cops by administrative functionaries of the boss. And so you see right there, like this one change in, or this one expansion in police power is affecting all sorts of strata of working people across town, right? This program would radically, I think, increase the number of arrests of homeless people, and it also is going to most likely serve as a tool for repressing the faculty union. So this overlap of the state and capital in the form of the police, I think can really only be understood by what Brian and Kylie said about and others, that we require the abolition of the police to acquire capitalism, but it's the other way around as well. And that, the abolitionism at this point is a perspective, right? We also have a perspective of socialist revolution, and so things we're trying to accomplish and working towards that perspective include supporting unions, supporting social movements, winning games where we can, right? So what's the equivalent of that with abolitionism? It's supporting reforms that limit police power and opposing reforms that expand police power. So in terms of the nuance we need to have around the police in organizing spaces, I think we need a detailed and specific understanding of all the ways in which they're our enemy. I don't think we need any particular nuance on whether they should be allowed in those spaces, because I think the answer there is a blanket no, and we should always be opposed to it.
Thank you so much. Stack is officially closed, so just to run it down, I have John, then H, then Kelsey, and then Reed, and then we'll give it back to Brian. So John K, go
ahead. Thank you, and thanks to Brian. That was a very interesting talk, and I got a lot out of it. I just wanted to talk about a couple of things, Philadelphia things. Because I've been involved with organizing around police brutality in the past here, and there's a couple of cases. Eddie Irizarry was shot by a cop during a traffic stop in Philadelphia, like 6 seconds after the cop got out of the car. The cop lied. He told conflicting stories. He told stories that were contradicted by his own body camera. All these things. Basically, the cop lied constantly and ended up actually in jail awaiting trial, which never happens with cops, and was convicted of voluntary manslaughter. But this took 2 years. fight, and he was immediately given time served and parole. So no time, no real consequence for murdering somebody in the street. And then last October, Robert Jones was killed by an off-duty Philadelphia homicide detective. This is one I've been more intimately involved with. Robert was a roadside assistant worker. He walked up to his cop's car because the guy had stopped in the middle of the street wearing his orange vest to see if he needed help. The cop shot him 4 times. And the so-called progressive district attorney, Larry Krasner, has refused to charge the cop because they don't find sufficient cause. And the cop tried to claim that he was being carjacked by a guy in an orange safety vest, which, carjackers always wear orange safety vests for safety. But in Eddie Irizarry's case, the PSL was the main organizer of this. And they ran a very sectarian and isolated campaign because it was their people. Their people were the only ones speaking at rallies, etc. And Frizzo has been intimately involved with the fight around Robert Jones. Yeah. And they've been better, but they limit themselves by calling for community controlled police. And also in the run-up to the Democratic primary, we're actually telling people to vote for Krasner, which struck me as just bizarre because later on he turned around and
Darla, thanks for the 5 gifted channel memberships. I really appreciate it. Congrats to everyone who got a gifted channel membership from Darla.
refuse to cop. And I think it's a problem that we have is the amazing amounts of sectarianism and sort of turf war stuff you see in these movement spaces with these different Stalinist groups. They grab a hold of a case and then nobody else can get involved with it, right? And that's a real problem. So anyway, I'll stop there. And thanks again.
Thank you, John. I've got Kelsey next and then H. Go ahead, Kelsey.
Hi, yeah. Can you hear me? Okay, cool. Because my microphone didn't tell me that I had unmuted. Anyway, great conversation. I want to say, Brian, I love the book. I did not wait for our reading groups and read it.
Hang on. I'm just going to get the clip up. I'm just going to get the clip up now. Reagan's telling me I need to clip this.
In July. Fantastic. And I want to say one of the really big things I took out of it on my first read, because now we're reading it again, is the idea that you can't reform the central function out of the police. The police centrally function as enforcers, violent enforcers of the capitalist system and of the racist capitalist system. So anyway, I just feel like that really is a powerful knowledge to have when talking with people about police, and especially with respect to reform or oversight or things like that people think will work and will not. And then I wanted to mention also just like broadly based on stuff that was said a while ago, because I got on the stack a while ago and now like maybe not relevant anymore, but that's okay. Social workers are also cops in that they bring the criminal justice system, or they entangle people more in the criminal justice system because they work for the cops. So like I'm not saying social workers themselves personally get their jobs because they want to be like cops. On the contrary, they probably oftentimes want to help people, but the system is not built for that. It is built to further police and surveil people. And then I also wanted to address Riley's comment on mandatory reporting. And this is not necessarily a firebrand perspective, maybe just mine. Laws aren't real. And if your job is trying to make you be the cops, you don't have to. And like, that's obviously don't like, if they make you fill out things that say like, sure, I will be a mandatory reporter, still lie to them. Like, don't lose your job over it, but like, don't, You don't have to follow bullshit rules. And I'll leave it at that. But again, thank you. Great conversation.
Laws are
Thank you so
real.
much, Kelsey. I've
Laws
got
are
H next.
real. Hang on, hang on. Thanks, Wolf, for becoming a channel member. I really appreciate it. That's awesome. You can save the clip. Got that. We should be almost done. This should be rounding up on done, but we're obviously going to go till the very end.
And then Reed. Go ahead.
So I got to go pack a suitcase. You're done? Okay, cool. And then we got Brian finishing up, of course, and that'll be nice.
All right, maybe not. I'll go to Reed first. Then go ahead, Reed.
Cool. Yeah, I just wanted to answer Annika's question as briefly as I can. And I noticed when Brian was speaking, a really great book on his bookshelf, amongst many, was Victor Serge's Year One of the Russian Revolution. And I think that that's such a great book for exploring some of, like, it helps answer some of this as well. Because I think, like, for us, right, revolution is a process, and revolution is the forcible entry of the masses onto the stage of history.
Hang on. Stephanie, listen, Stephanie. You can't fix people who are indoctrinated into a cult. They're in a cult. Most of these people have been in this cult since they were kids, either because they had socialist parents or because the public schools got to them real early. You cannot fix these people. It is a waste of energy. You cannot convince these people that they are wrong. They don't care what you have to say. They're not going to listen to you. Stephanie, you're still real new to this, and we love that you're here, and we love that you're excited about this. My recommendation, though, is, like, you just got to focus on learning the material. And I know that, like, I know it's overwhelming and I know it's a lot when you first find it. I really do get it because I remember what it was like. But, like, you got to understand that there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do to help the people who are in the cult. If someone is in a cult, they have to want to leave it. And if they don't want to leave it, there's nothing you can say. There's nothing you can do. Our purpose here is to understand the cult, because unfortunately, this cult wants to overthrow the federal government, and they're extremely organized, and there's more of them than people think there are. And they run the public schools, and they run the colleges and universities, and they do all that stuff. And so, yeah.
And through that process, workers, and masses of people themselves change. And so if we understand the state under capitalism and under class society existing separate and removed from large numbers of people, in order for the capitalists to be able, maintain their rule, the state under, socialist society, even a newly formed socialist society, if you look at the Paris Commune, if you look at the Russian Revolution, if you look at other examples, even general strikes, it's the process of, instead of having the police be this separate body of armed men, the workers themselves start to take, aspects of defending their society into their own hands. So there's examples from that Victor Serge book of workers themselves setting up tribunals, court tribunals in their own districts. There was a public prosecutor and a defense that spoke before the public, who the public spoke in part as part of the debate, and then the verdict was taken by vote among the audience. And so, like, that's a very small example of, like, some of the ways in which the law and the police roles and all of that sort of stuff look very different in the process of revolution.
Thank you, Reed. H, if you can add your comment, go ahead.
Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. So quickly, Hannah here from Harlem. So the main point, I have like a million, and thank you so much. This is so like intense, and I'm like half in, half out, but I keep tuning in, and just because I'm
Hey, thank you,
on
Debbie. I
vacation.
appreciate
But
it.
so some years ago, I remember I gave a talk through the ISO on people who were, I mean, let's not even say they're mentally ill. People like you have a family member, a neighbor, a friend, you call 911 because they are going off. How many of them are murdered by the police? I wish I had my finger on the numbers because I wrote about this. If you want to point to one thing, there are fewer racial disparities in the murders there because once you are deemed psychiatrically unstable, you are the outcast. I mean, you're part of these, disenfranchised, marginalized, expanding, the undocumented, the blah, blah, that's been part of it for a while. So people are simply murdered. I had a number of experiences like that in my neighborhood. This is partly where the social work intersection comes in because I agree, a social work system can function as the system, as the police, but rarely in any profession have I encountered more radicalized people because they may enter as, do-good liberals. They are radicalized by what they see. And the spaces I've seen and the models I've seen built coming out of, like Boston College has one, liberatory, I can't remember what, but these are like Marxist frameworks for understanding systemic frameworks, revolutionary, some anarchist, but often, you can see there are a lot of social workers in revolutionary socialist organizations. So I think,
You don't
anyway,
say.
those are 2 points. I mean, I personally, I think engaging in struggle, you see very quickly that the cop is your enemy. I saw the cops smash in the skull and face and teeth of a young man who had served 3 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, and he was part of an anti-war organization, and they had a police guy on a horse who just smashed his face in. And, he already had PTSD and traumatic brain injury. 2, Black Lives Matter, police brutalities, protests. I'm walking down with my friend's girlfriend.
3 minutes.
Yeah. A white cop just leaned over the barricade. We're doing nothing illegal. She's Black. He just punches her in the face and she falls out. And she's like, don't do anything. They'll arrest me. I guarantee it. Just say nothing. Just say nothing. I mean, I'm sure everyone has had this experience, but all you have to do is go on a few protests and you see it happen. So.
Thank you very much. I'm going to give it back to Brian for final comments, probably about like
Cool.
10 minutes because we started about 10 minutes late and I want to let you talk. So go ahead, comrade.
Can you give me 30 seconds? I have a situation with a locked out neighbor I need to go do. So tell one joke and I'll be back. Okay.
Oh my goodness. You put the one who's the most anxious about chairing a session and just leave me with the mic. So sad. Riley, do you want to tell a joke?
So dark. How many Marxists does it take to screw in a light bulb?
Uh-oh.
Wait for it. None. The bulb contains the seed of its own revolution.
You all are too.
Even communists have dad jokes, guys.
Funny. Are we good to give Brian 10 minutes? Everyone give thumbs up. All right, cool. Well, like I said, I'm the nervous chair, so we can sit in awkward silence till they come back if we want.
Why don't we open up Stack again and see if there's a couple people that we could squeeze?
Oh, we can't tempt Jason with an extra 3 minutes.
Okay, that's a great idea. You could start with me.
If someone wants to DM me and wants to riff on how we hate the cops, go ahead and DM me Stack, and you can riff until Brian returns.
Okay, we're gonna
If
fast
there's
forward.
someone new that also responded. Oh, here comes Brian.
I'm back.
God damn
Very
it.
sorry about that very strange timing.
Brian coming to spare us all.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. 10 minutes, you say? Yes. Okay. Quick things first, and then I'll get to, I think, the brunt of the matter, which is the question of alternatives, which I think is a very interesting and cool discussion to talk about. First, abolition and social work. I also come from a mental health background. That's what I do for my day job. So I would just say there's a lot of engagement in the topic. And this book, Abolition and Social Work, is really interesting and done by a number of social workers who are thinking this through. So check that out, and I'll leave that to them. Number two, the question of law. Yeah, the quote that I gave from Yevgeny Pashukanis is a Bolshevik legal theorist. And I think that the whole system of criminal justice, I think, is a bourgeois notion connected to the bourgeois state. And so I think that under socialism, communism, he would argue that is a Bolshevik legal theorist. And I think the quote that I gave that to them. Number two, the question of law. Yeah, the quote that I gave from number two, the question of law. Yeah, the quote that I gave from Yevgeny Pashukanis is a Bolshevik legal theorist. And I think that the whole system of criminal justice, I think, is a bourgeois notion connected to the bourgeois state. And so I think that under socialism, communism, he would argue that he would expect for law itself to wither away, just like the state, because law is required, is assumed because of the atomization of individuals that have to work together through a contract. And under a collective society, those things wouldn't be needed. And so Law and Marxism, really nerdy, really good book that sort of goes in that while, but I think that definitely the whole apparatus of the state, which is a legal apparatus, assumes, again, this atomization of individuals that have to be regulated by a foreign power, something that rises above the capitalist state to regulate these things, as opposed through collective democratic decision-making and those sorts of things. So I think that's the short answer to that, but there's, of course, a lot more to be said. I think that's related to the conversation about the worker state, and I think that Reed is pretty dead on as far as what that means. I think the thing I would just underscore is that it's important to, I think we know this, but always to say this, that when we talk about the worker state, that phrase, while it says state, is like a completely different thing than how we envision the state. So Lenin talked about this worker state as council direct democracy. And so it may be state in name, but it's a temporary thing. It's direct council-based democracy. And so in his Task to the Proletarian Revolution, which was written in April 1917, when he first describes what is the worker state, the first thing he argues is for the abolition of police, the army, and the bureaucracy. And so that's how we get to, how we can not have some of the things that the comrades from New York mentioned. That the state is itself is something that has a separate interest from all society. Its job is to be the arbiter and actor to make a positive business climate for capitalist class, the committee for managing the common affairs of the capitalist class. As such, the repressive apparatus then acts on that interest that is something that is separate than all society itself. And so if there isn't that separate power, we don't have any state that floats above, but instead organizations of councils, then there would not be any kind of repressive apparatus that would have an interest apart from the democracy of the people involved. So there's a lot more sort of piece that through, but I think it was kind of answered in how you sort of frame the question that democracy is a key thing. Police oversight review boards. I think there's more to be said about that. I think the short answer is that almost all the time, police review boards put civilians in places in which they're determining police policy. And that makes one a partner with the police as opposed to organizing to, find them accountable or limit their power or whatnot. There may be some instances in which there's a body that only reviews I don't know, specific instances. I don't know of those. And most of those are bodies that have the power to hire and fire, discipline, and decide police policy. We don't want to hire any police. We don't want to be a part of managing with a left veneer any of their policies that in the end we know what the core function is. We just want it out of the way. Another thing that's often put forward, so in Chicago, they argued for a police review board. And what they said was, this is how we're going to defund the police because it gives democratic control over the police. There's something that is elided here that's important to note. The police are already considered a public force. So it's like, well, we want to have a review board to be able to cut the budget of the police, and that's greater democracy. And it's like, well, but mayors and city councilors are ostensibly democratic, and we are unable to limit or cut their budgets that way. And so maybe it's not that we need another body that does that, but maybe it's a problem with the institution of democracy and local level itself. And so picking that apart, I think, is key. Last point about alternatives. I forgot to time myself. Maria, how much time do I have?
You still got 5 minutes.
Perfect. It's exactly what I wanted. So a lot of comrades spoke really well to the question of alternatives, as far as it being a process, that it's not going to happen overnight and all that sort of stuff. What I want to add to that is a couple points. The first is when people talk about, well, what are the alternatives? That's in some ways a kind of subversion of what the actual concern is. And the concern is, if there's no police, then it'll be chaotic and it'll be like Mad Max and those sorts of things. Like, that's actually what they're worried about. And I think there's a couple things that I go over in the book that just kind of disprove that pretty handily. First, there have been instances in which police have gone on slowdowns, so not enforcing certain crimes and those sorts of things. And in Chicago in 2019 and New York in 2014, both in those times that saw the crime rate went down. The crime rate, not the crime reporting. So the other way around. So people reported less crime. Additionally, there was experiments like in the Brownsville neighborhood where they removed police for a week and they found that there was 0 911 calls. And so there's instances in which you actually see when they step back to a certain degree. It's not the case that all of a sudden society descends into chaos. In Finland in the 1970s, there's a nationwide police strike, I think for about 3 weeks. And similarly, they're like, oh, some people sped a little more, but again, it didn't become Mad Max or like The Purge or any of those kind of horrific visions. The other thing is that we think about abolition as a process, we think about abolition as a revolutionary process, and we see various points in which revolutionary movements push the police off the street. The Arab Spring and Oaxaca and Dairy, I talk about this in the book, in which the police are literally forced to run away. And in working through the book, I interviewed various participant organizers from a number of those struggles. Some from the Syrian revolutionary struggle in Egypt and Oaxaca, and in Derry, Northern Ireland. And independently, when I was interviewing them about the process, all of them said, without even me asking this, all of them independently said, it was the safest I've ever felt. And so when you have social struggle, you have a sense of solidarity, that we are all together trying to forge a new world and fight back against this sort of things. You actually have a sense of things going better because we have a shared project. And I think that's something that is missed when people often just be like, well, how are we going to handle this or that social ill? And it's like, we're remaking the world. And that remaking of the world means we're remaking ourselves. And so I think just the notions that it's going to be chaotic and it's going to be unsafe is not an automatic demonstrably thing that can happen, right? Sure, it could happen, but people assume it like that is automatic. No cops, it's absolute chaos. There's mounds of evidence that actually say the opposite might even be more true. We don't know, it's a conjecture, but it might even be more true. Last point about that is that I think in talking about the question of alternatives, it's in some ways also a question of workers' power. And so people are concerned about certain things. And I think Riley, you mentioned in the question, some of them are easier. Like, okay, well, if people had all their needs met, then they wouldn't have to steal, right? If you also have your needs met, there's less stressors, there's just less stress. The very social phenomenons, like even, domestic violence, murder, one can imagine those things becoming less of an issue. Is it going to go away? No, but less of an issue. So we're talking about having everybody's needs met. Certain things will be gone overnight. Certain things might lessen. And in that context, are people actually saying that's what we're required to stop these small but serious and harmful social ills is a massive group of super armed thugs. It doesn't make any sense. And what I would say is, when someone's like, well, what do we do? And it's like, well, people who are experts in all those areas have a lot of ideas. I've worked in mental health. People work in domestic and interpersonal violence. In those situations, if we were to say, hey, people who are the experts of that, you now have all the resources of society to figure it out, then I have a faith that the people who are the experts in that area, with all the resources of society to figure it out, have workers' power over that, will have the ability to construct some alternatives that are probably better than an army of swaggering, arrogant bullies. It's that simple. And I think I would sort of put it forward in that way. And so with that, I think the last thing, and I'll close on this, is the other component of alternatives is oftentimes people think that what we need to do is we make the alternatives first. And that means that the police are then made obsolete. They're crowded out by the fact that we're making all these alternatives. Again, I think in instances of struggle that I mentioned before, it's actually the flip. Like, we need to make alternatives, build organization, connect our communities in order to sort of fight back. But we need to actually clear the space to actually make the alternatives we want. The police need to be cleared away in order to have the resources to have real alternatives, to have real control over society, to have the real kind of safety that is possible when we, all of us, are at the helm. And that's why I think we should think and claim that people like Lenin and Rosa Luxemburg are abolitionists. I mentioned the quote from Lenin about what is the council state, and the first thing is the abolition of the police, the military, and the bureaucracy. And Rosa Luxemburg, in the article "What the Spartacists Want," which is the first program that was being derived in the heat of the rising German Revolution, they put forward what we need to do to secure the revolution. The very first thing that she wrote was disarm the police. The first point about how we secure the revolution before all the other things is disarm the police. And so that should be our focus as well. I think it is. We're deepening it. Great conversation. Thank you, comrades.
All right. That was pretty great. He just said everything. I didn't even say anything for 11 minutes. He said everything. I knew I just needed to clip the whole fucking thing.
Thank you
There's
so
like
much
3
for
clips in that.
spending time with us, and thanks everyone for a great discussion. I will pass it off to our next session on internet.
We did it, guys. We did it. We got through another presentation. I have another 86 clips that I need to make. I have so many clips on my desktop right now. I'm like slowly working my way through them, but at least we have them clipped. We have them. You know what? This will be a good activity for me to do on the plane tomorrow as I'm drinking. And I got to go pack a suitcase because it's 8:30 at night and I'm getting on a plane tomorrow. And I need to go pack a suitcase. Guys, the streaming schedule over the next several days, I'm not exactly sure what it's going to be. I may stream, I may not stream. If I do stream, it will likely be later in the day because I'm going to be in a different time zone. So just keep an eye on the YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to Telegram. You can find the Telegram link in the replies. I do post a Telegram when I go live. So if you guys want a notification to your phone, just follow the Telegram channel. It's in the replies. It's t.me/decodetheleft. And I'm going to go on a mission. I'm going to go and get a bunch of cool stuff. And I will be back. And I may stream while I'm gone, and I may just stream when I come back. But I will be getting on a plane tomorrow. I will be coming back on Monday. So officially, there's not going to be a normal streaming schedule until next Tuesday. But that doesn't mean I won't stream. It just means that on tomorrow I'm going to be on a plane, and on Monday I'm going to be on a plane. And who's to say what happens between those times? Who's to say? So I want to thank everyone who sent in a super chat today. You guys were super generous. Thank you for funding my adventures into the dystopia that is the far left. Thanks to everyone who came out today. And I will talk to you guys soon. Take care, guys. Have a good one.
How are you feeling? How long have you been here? some idea. I'm not clear. How is it that playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital?
That's difficult to answer.